Chapter 855. Boom. It was as if thunder had exploded in her head. She was so frightened that she sat upright and didn't even dare to move. Feeling the person in his arms stiffen, Xiao Su couldn't help but laugh. "I'm not a tiger that can eat you." Chu Qingyan criticized him in her heart. "You're much more powerful than a tiger." She swallowed her saliva and prepared to stand up. "Since I'll disturb you, I'll leave first." Just as she stood up, she was pulled into his arms again. Her shoulder bumped into his hard chest, and she couldn't help but cry out in surprise. To be honest, she felt that he must have deliberately waited for her to stand up before making his move. Compared to reading, I prefer to see you at a loss. Xiao Su put his hand on her shoulder, his fingertips moving slightly as he helped her massage her acupuncture points. A comfortable warmth flowed from her shoulder blade to her entire body. She couldn't bear to leave, so she turned her back to him and enjoyed his massage. Her ears automatically blocked out what he had just said. After a while, her whole body felt warm. She couldn't help but sigh. "Your skills are really good." Xiao Su raised his eyebrows. "I have many good parts. Do you want to try?" Chu Qingyan's face darkened. What was wrong with the big ice cube today? She felt that something was wrong. "Why are you so free today?" She wanted to say that he had the leisure to flirt with his fiancée. "For next month's big event, I've pushed back all the things that should be pushed back," he replied casually. "All right, then you'd better read to increase your knowledge and prepare for next month. I won't disturb you anymore." She prepared to stand up again. He propped up his face with one hand and looked at her with a smile. "I feel that rather than letting you go out and harm others, it's safer to keep you under my nose." This smile didn't reach his eyes. Chu Qingyan had the misconception that he was settling scores with her after the autumn. "When did I harm others?" She raised her head and asked, puzzled. "Tao Lin, an old friend, we meet again after a long separation." Xiao Su still had a smile on his face as he lightly threw out a few words. She felt a little dizzy after hearing those words, and it took her a while to react. She glared at her angrily. "You followed me?" To be exact, it should be following Higashio Motetsu. As soon as he entered Jiangnan, Shaolai cavalry received the news and followed the vine to find the melon, and saw you. Xiao Su was not surprised at all. Once Higashio Motetsu returned to Jiangnan, he would look for the little fellow. Hearing his words, Chu Qingyan felt better, but she didn't quite understand. "Why do you want to spy on Dongting?" "Once bitten, twice shy. Although you're forgetful, I haven't forgotten that he used you. It's better to take precautions before it happens." "But he has already corrected it, hasn't he? He helped me a lot when I was in Jiangnan." Chu Qingyan knew that he was right to be worried, but she still wanted to defend Dongting. She always believed in her friends. "It's fine if he doesn't have that intention, but if he wants to use you again, then I won't be polite." Xiao Su stroked her long hair, thoughts spinning in his eyes. With Higashio Motetsu's intelligence, it was impossible for him not to notice that he was spying on him. That was why he went straight to find the little fellow as soon as he returned. He just wanted to show off to him. He coldly curled his lips. The little fellow was sincere and kind, and would not guard against her family and friends. Then he would be her shield, blocking all the unfavorable factors outside and not touching her at all. Although Chu Qingyan didn't quite agree with the big ice cube's friendship with her, she knew that once he decided on something, there was no turning back. She couldn't help but look at him helplessly. "Dongting and I are really just friends, don't think too much. I didn't realize before that you were such a big vinegar jar." The origin of this matter must have been caused by someone's jealousy. Now that he was always watching the opposite sex around her, did that mean that even the animals around her couldn't be male in the future? She felt that it was very possible. Xiao Su reached out and pinched her nose. "Even if you find out now, you can't go back on your words." She rolled her eyes at him and turned her head away, not wanting to look at him. But soon, she was attracted by the slender and beautiful fingers on his lap. She lowered her head and played with them. Xiao Su lowered his head and looked at her quiet appearance. The hair on her temples fell with her movements, covering the side of her face. He reached out and tucked her hair behind her head, his eyes gentle. The little fellow might not know that her unintentional actions would make people unable to look away. He had seen Higashio Motetsu's gaze when he looked at her. There was an inexplicable emotion in his eyes, but perhaps he just didn't know it. Perhaps this was the so-called, the onlooker cannot see clearly. He wouldn't interfere with the little fellow's freedom to make friends, but he had his own ways to protect his territory from being violated. Those who coveted as long as the little fellow's gaze was on him, they wouldn't have a chance to take advantage of it. And he would never give them a chance. Chu Qingyan didn't know that the person behind her was exuding a strong sense of possessiveness. Sichuan Jiangnan, the scenery was picturesque. At its border, the hot wind blew, the war drums beat, the smoke of gunpowder filled the air, and the flames of war were rolling. If Jiangnan was a paradise for the people, then here could be said to be hell on earth. One by one, the soldiers fell down, dying in the most tragic way. "General, the enemy is about to attack the city. What should we do?" Deputy General Yen Shi climbed up the tall building and said to the man in armor, who was covered in black ash and whose appearance could no longer be distinguished. If you looked carefully, you would find that the man who was called General was only 17 or 18 years old. At this time, he frowned and stared at the clamorous enemy below, as well as his own soldiers who were retreating. Then, he turned to the deputy general beside him with red eyes. "I clearly plan to lure them to Lianyun Cliff, 10 miles away. Why are they here?" This general is also not clear. Our men have reported that the Southern Song Army has indeed sent soldiers, but the number of soldiers does not exceed 100. "General, I'm afraid that they have seen through our plan and are planning to beat us at our own game. They sent a portion of their forces to lure us into their trap, before gathering their forces to attack Qingchao City. General, we have already sent out a large number of troops. The remaining people are not enough to resist the menacing enemy. I'm afraid that we won't be able to hold on for another 2 hours." Yen Shi's voice trembled. It was as if he could see the Southern Song Army breaking into the city in 2 hours. At that time, blood would flow like a river. "General, the city is about to be broken. How could this be? I clearly planned it out. How could they see through our plan?" The young general's eyes were unfocused as he murmured in disbelief. But soon he recovered. His eyes were firm and resolute. Then, he put his hand on his waist and prepared to draw his sword. If the city lives, the people live. If the city dies, the people die. "General, let's abandon the city." Yen Shi couldn't bear it, but he had to suggest. "No, I won't allow it." As soon as he finished speaking, Yen Shi knelt down. "Your Highness the Fourth Prince, I beg you to abandon the city." The young general's hand trembled as his eyes turned red. "Consort, you sent a message yesterday. She asked me to remember to ask your Highness to protect yourself. So, your Highness, where there's life, there's hope. Let's abandon the city." He was a general, but at the same time, he was a prince. His life was not up to him to decide. "Give the order to abandon the city." He closed his eyes, too ashamed to look back at the city behind him. Chapter 856. When Xiao Ran led his men out of Qingchao City, arrogant laughter rose and fell in the distance, constantly entering everyone's ears. Xiao Ran turned around and saw the southern blue flag on the city wall. His eyes almost popped out of their sockets. There were only a few soldiers left beside him. They were all seriously injured. As he rode on his horse, he could hear the painful groans of his subordinates. His heart felt like it was being cut by a knife. If it was his eldest brother, he definitely wouldn't have abandoned the city. No, if the one leading the army was his eldest brother, he definitely wouldn't have let the Southern Blue Army get any benefits. He definitely wouldn't have let the Southern Blue Army enter the city. "Fourth Prince, this isn't your fault. The Southern Blue Army came with a ferocious momentum. Not only do they have powerful weapons, they also live in a bitterly cold environment and eat raw beef and mutton. They are tall and mighty. We aren't their opponents." Yen Shi saw that his general didn't say a word, so he couldn't help but explain. Xiao Ran smiled bitterly. "Deputy General Yen, you don't need to comfort me. In the end, it's my lack of skill that made me unable to lead you to kill the enemy." As he spoke, he looked up at the sky filled with smoke. His expression darkened slightly. I begged Imperial Father again to get the last chance to lead the army, but I didn't expect a crushing defeat. Blood flowed like a river. The people had no way to make a living. General, you must take care of yourself. Your safety concerns the entire Sichuan. Yan Shi saw that he was depressed and immediately advised. Xiao Ran turned to look at Yan Shi. His armor was broken and his face was charred black. He couldn't recognize his original appearance. He laughed at himself. Deputy General Yan, you're my grandfather's man, right? Yan Shi was stunned, then lowered his head and admitted, this subordinate followed the right minister for many years. 3 years ago, I was sent to Anlin City to guard it. This time, I was ordered to follow His Highness. Lu Wenfeng, Zhu Ocheng and Zhou Feiyu too? Yes. Xiao Ran understood. This time, he led the troops to battle. On the surface, it looked like he was fighting alone. In fact, his grandfather and mother had already placed people by his side. He originally thought that he could spread his wings and fly high, but he didn't expect that in the end, he still couldn't escape everyone's protection. Yan Shi sensed his disappointment and comforted him. Your Highness, you don't have to worry too much. Right Minister and Consort Yu are also concerned about you. Moreover, with your age, it's already commendable that you can persist for so long. Rare and precious? The truly commendable one is the eldest brother. When he led the army to battle, he was only 13 or 14 years old, but he became famous in one battle. Xiao Ran sighed in his heart. Knowing that Yan Shi was comforting him, Xiao Ran did not say anything more. Just as everyone was taking a short break, they suddenly heard the sound of uniform military boots stomping on the ground. What's that sound? Have the reinforcements arrived? No, it's not that fast. Everyone began to panic. Yan Shi flew over from afar and said to Xiao Ran in a panic, General, the Southern Song army is chasing after us. We're about to be surrounded. Xiao Ran immediately got up from the stone. Although his expression was anxious, his tone was still calm. Is there any way to leave nearby? This place is close to the county Stone Peak. There's a Changza Valley there, which is full of swamps. If our people can enter the valley and use the terrain there, we can temporarily avoid the Southern Song army. Yan Shi replied. Good, it's decided. Everyone follow this general. Xiao Ran ordered and led his people towards the county Stone Peak. Thousands of miles away from Qingqiao City, in the Sichuan Imperial Palace, the sun shone on the earth, but it couldn't light up the haze that hovered around the imperial study. Your Majesty, there's an urgent report from the front lines. Qingqiao City has fallen. The Assistant Minister of the Ministry of War knelt in front of the table and reported in pain. Sichuan Emperor was furious. He waved his hand and said, Get up. The Assistant Minister of the Ministry of War immediately stood up and retreated to the back of the ministers. In the study, the left row was led by the left Prime Minister Liang Qingyu, while the right row was led by the right Prime Minister Fu Jianrong. Everyone had different expressions when they heard the news. Fu Jianrong's faction frowned and looked very worried. The one leading the army was the fourth prince, Xiao Ran. They had strongly recommended him to go to the front lines. Now that the cities had fallen one after another, it was like slapping themselves in the face. Liang Qingyu's faction was watching from the sidelines. Their eyes were full of ridicule for the fourth prince's faction. When they had strongly opposed the fourth prince's deployment, they could see that he was just a brat who was still wet behind the ears. It was impossible for him to take up the responsibility. Now, it was just as they had expected. What's the situation of our 3 armies now? Sichuan Emperor asked with a dark face. A minister stepped forward and replied, Out of the 300,000 soldiers, 80,000 died on the battlefield. Around 150,000 were injured. It's a disastrous loss. These numbers were frightening. Sichuan Emperor gave his eldest son, Liang Song, a look. Liang Song understood. He stepped forward and cupped his hands to the Sichuan Emperor. Your Majesty, in just a few months, we have already lost Qingqiao City, Jiangning County, Jiasong County, and nearly 10 other cities. Moreover, our army has suffered such heavy losses. If this continues, I'm afraid that the army's morale will be unstable. It's not good for the war. A minister beside Fu Jianrong immediately stepped forward. Lord Liang, do you want His Majesty to change the commander-in-chief? Changing the commander-in-chief on the spot will really cause the army's morale to be unstable. Lord Liang didn't say that he wanted to change the commander-in-chief. It was you who suggested it. A minister on the left sneered and retorted. Immediately after, another minister on the left stepped forward. Lord Liang and Lord Li are both right. If we lose the cities, the army's morale will be unstable. This is very disadvantageous for our dynasty. However, Lord Lu said that changing the commander-in-chief will affect the army's morale. In fact, if the new commander-in-chief is someone the army is willing to follow, then the army's morale will not only not be broken, it will be even more stable. Once these words were spoken, they immediately received the support of the left minister's faction. The right minister's faction was not to be outdone. They all stepped forward and retorted righteously. Sichuan Emperor silently glanced at the arguing ministers below. Everyone felt the dragon's might from above and immediately quieted down. A moment later, the Xixian Emperor slowly opened his mouth. What my beloved subject said is not wrong, but in the face of a great enemy, a quarrel of words is of no use. We hope to hear good advice, not a quarrel of words like you causing trouble. The ministers couldn't help but lower their heads, not daring to meet the eyes of the person above. Sichuan Emperor continued. My beloved ministers, do you have any good suggestions for the war? Your Majesty, this old minister believes that although the fourth prince is talented and intelligent, the Southern Blue Army is full of cunning and valiant. The fourth prince's talent is still shallow and I'm afraid that he won't be a match for them. Therefore, this old minister suggests that we change the commander-in-chief who has experienced hundreds of battles. An old but highly respected official of 3 dynasties, Duke Chonghe, took the lead and bowed his head to Sichuan Emperor. Once these words were spoken, most of the people present agreed. The right minister's faction wanted to refute, but the facts were in front of them. They could only remain silent. Duke Chonghe, what good candidate do you recommend? Sichuan Emperor respected this duke. His tone was not as cold as before. This person is brave and valiant, wise and resourceful. He led an army at a young age, has a strong mind, and is invincible. I believe that your Majesty already has a candidate in mind. Duke Chonghe stroked his beard and spoke unhurriedly. When Sichuan Emperor heard this, he glanced gloomily at Duke Chonghe. However, he quickly realized that the ministers in front of him all revealed a look of understanding. He was slightly stunned. Could it be that this son of his had already become the commander-in-chief that everyone expected? Chapter 857. Your Majesty, Prince Chonghe is right. I believe that only His Royal Highness can take on this responsibility. Your Majesty, His Royal Highness fought with the Southern Song Army at the border many years ago and forced them to retreat. Although the scale was small, at least His Royal Highness fought with the Southern Song Army and had some understanding of them. As the saying goes, know thyself and know thy enemy, and you will not be defeated in 100 battles. Your Majesty, I also agree that His Royal Highness should be allowed to regain control of the army and force the arrogant Southern Song Army to retreat and recover the lost land. After Commander Prince Chonghe finished speaking, many of the officials in the imperial study spoke up and pointed at the same person. The King of England, Xiao. At this time, the right Prime Minister's faction was silent, and the left Prime Minister's faction was also silent. Sichuan Emperor looked at the ministers kneeling on the ground. They were all ministers who were usually neutral and did not side with any party. Sichuan Emperor's squinted eyes suddenly loosened and he rubbed his eyebrows. If it was the left Prime Minister's faction who spoke up, then he could still tell himself that it was the left Prime Minister's faction who wanted Xiao to return in order to strengthen his position. However, unexpectedly, the people who recommended him were all neutral ministers. He did not expect that Xiao's position in the court would still be so stable after leaving the capital for 5 years. In other words, he had always neglected his position in the hearts of the officials. At the same time, He also neglected one thing. He was the Sichuan prince and also an outstanding general. The ministers knelt on the ground, and the number continued to increase. The West Xian emperor sighed inwardly. In the end, he raised his hand with a tired expression. "We understand what you are all thinking." Then he turned to look at the silent right prime minister, Fu Jianrong. Regarding the minister's suggestions, does the right prime minister have any opinions? Fu Jianrong pursed his lips, bowed his head and replied, "This subject obeys your majesty's orders." The current situation was because Xiao Ran did not live up to expectations. If he still insisted on letting him lead the army, then he would offend these mainstay ministers. He would also be cursed as someone who only cared about his own selfish desires and did not care about the safety of the country. Sichuan Emperor understood the right prime minister's attitude. He continued to ask, "Left prime minister, what do you think?" A glint flashed across Liang Qingyu's eyes. He bowed his head and replied, "Your subject obeys your majesty's orders." In any case, the situation was already set. The ministers who proposed the proposal were enough to give His Majesty a headache. He did not want to get involved. He would just sit back and enjoy the fruits of others' labor. His Majesty was already unhappy, so he did not want to take the lead. Sichuan Emperor snorted coldly in his heart. This sly old fox, he still pretended to be obedient after taking advantage of the situation. Who knew how much he was laughing in his heart? Since the two prime ministers have no objections, I will adopt the minister's suggestions. I will recall the King of England and have him depart for the battlefield today to meet with the three armies. When the time comes, he will hand over to the fourth prince and take over the position of commander-in-chief of the three armies. He will whip the enemy and reclaim the lost territory. Sichuan Emperor said powerfully, "Your Majesty is wise." The ministers bowed their heads and knelt on the ground. "You may leave." Sichuan Emperor waved his hand. The ministers took their leave in an orderly manner. The ministers left the imperial study in twos and threes. When they reached the stone stairs, Liang Qinyu followed Commandery Prince Chonghe in front of him. "Commandery Prince, thank you for speaking up for justice in front of His Majesty," Liang Qinyu said sincerely. Commandery Prince Chonghe glanced at him. "Left Prime Minister, you must have misunderstood. I did not do it for you." Liang Qinyu frowned in confusion. "What do you mean, Commandery Prince?" Commandery Prince Chonghe's expression was unreadable. He laughed heartily and said, "I am old and will not be able to participate in court politics for many years. I only hope that Sichuan can prosper and the people live in peace while I am alive. This advice is only for the sake of the overall situation. Xiao Su can take on great responsibilities. That is all." Liang Qinyu felt that he understood but also did not understand. Commandery Prince Chonghe smiled. "Have a safe journey, Prime Minister Zhua. This Commandery Prince will take his leave first." "Take care, Commandery Prince." Liang Qinyu hurriedly cupped his hands. When Commandery Prince Chonghe was far away, Liang Song walked up from behind. "Father, what did the Commandery Prince say? This person is very cunning." I was also confused by what he said. To be able to establish himself in the imperial court for 3 dynasties and gain the respect of His Majesty, he must be a capable person. Liang Qinyu frowned as he watched Commandery Prince Chonghe leave. When Liang Song heard this, he said, "He is indeed powerful." However, it was because he dared to stand up and say those words that His Majesty relented and recalled the King of England. Liang Qinyu frowned. Actually, with Commandery Prince Chonghe's suggestion, His Majesty will be unable to withstand the pressure and issue an imperial edict sooner or later. Liang Song said as he walked with his father. Although that is the case, I am afraid that if it drags on for too long, the military strength will be severely reduced. When that time comes, even if the King of England returns, he will not be able to reverse the situation. Liang Qinyu shook his head. "Father, you are right." Liang Song nodded. Liang Qinyu recalled His Majesty's gloomy expression in the imperial study and could not help but say, "For now, you must restrain your officials and make sure they do not do anything out of line. Tell them to be careful with their words and actions and wait for the King of England to return victorious. After today's incident, I am afraid that His Majesty will be more strict with our people. Liang Song's expression could not help but become serious. Understood. After that, Liang Song asked hesitantly, but father, do you think that the King of England will accept the imperial edict and go to war? I am afraid that is not up to him. Liang Qingyu looked at the rolling dark clouds in the sky and said in a low voice. After the officials left the imperial study, the entire room suddenly became much emptier. However, Sichuan Emperor felt that his chest was very heavy. Eunuch Xiao saw this and immediately opened the window to let in some fresh air. Perhaps it was the fresh breeze that blew in, dispersing the haze in Sichuan Emperor's heart. His tightly knitted brows relaxed a lot. He recalled the scene of the officials begging for orders and his expression became gloomy again. He had calculated everything and sent Xiao Su away from the capital, forcing him not to return for the rest of his life. He originally thought that he could sit back and relax. Who knew that the Southern Blue Army would suddenly launch an invasion of the border and rapidly encroach on the capital? At first, he rejected the suggestions of the officials and appointed Xiao Ran to let him use this opportunity to establish his prestige. However, he did not expect that the Southern Blue Army had been honing its strength for many years and had a strong army. Xiao Ran had been defeated one after another. Even if he wanted to protect his position as the commander-in-chief, he had to consider the civil and military officials, as well as the country. Recalling Xiao Su was not his wish, but he had to do it. As an emperor, he could not do as he pleased. Sichuan Emperor opened his eyes. After many years of accumulated prestige, his gaze was heavy, like a hibernating tiger that hid its fierceness. Qiaoji, grind the ink. I want to write an imperial edict. Yes. Qiaoji immediately stepped forward and spread the bright yellow scroll on the table. Then he stood to the side and ground the ink. He knew that His Majesty was not in a good mood, so he tried to reduce his presence as much as possible. Sichuan Emperor took the weasel brush from the brush rack. His gaze focused and he began to write. A large piece of writing was written in one go. He picked up the imperial jade seal and put it on. Then he waved his hand and had Qiaoji put it away and ordered someone to issue the edict. Right now, the most important thing was to solve the problem between his eyebrows. Chapter 858. Time flew by, and many things seemed to be on the right track. Once the melon seeds were put into the market, the response was particularly good. They were sold out as soon as they were in stock. Yang Xiaohuan had a large stack of orders in her hands, most of which came from restaurants, tea houses, and brothels. As soon as the grape wine appeared, it immediately attracted the attention of wine lovers. Furthermore, the wine signboard included the beauty products for women, so it wasn't only male customers who were buying them. Coupled with the fact that there was a poem about the grape wine in a luminous glass, the wood spirits wine glasses were all sold out. Needless to say, the rest simply caused a buying frenzy. On this sunny day, Chu Qingyan didn't leave the residence. Instead, she gathered the staff for a meeting. The first meeting was about the staff of Whole Foods May, which was related to her snack business. The second meeting was about the staff of Drunken River Flow, which was related to her wine business. The third meeting was about the staff of Jubao, which was related to her casino business. The third meeting was about the staff of Le Xiaoyao, which was related to her brothels. Because her wedding day was coming soon, she had to settle everything before that so that she could set off for Lian City with peace of mind. There were only a few people in each meeting, but these people were the core members of the management team. Some of them were the experts she had found earlier, some of them were experts in mathematics, some of them were calculative women, and some of them were good negotiators. Some of them were saved by her, and some of them took the initiative to join her. In short, these people owed her a favor and were unwilling to leave. Soldiers were trained for 1,000 days to be used in a single moment. This was exactly what it meant. In the beginning, she had never thought that there would be a day when she would take in so many people and use them at such a crucial moment. Later on, Qing Yanluo, who had witnessed her growth, couldn't help but sigh. At first, she despised her for being overly compassionate and saving so many people, but in the end she found out that she had picked up a pile of treasures. Perhaps this was what they meant by good deeds being rewarded with good deeds. The staff of the 4 meetings didn't know each other except for those in their own industry. This was also why Chu Qingyan wanted to be discreet. Because these 4 industries were established under another name, unlike the continuation products, where she used Chu Yan's name to cooperate with Xiao. People said that a cunning rabbit had 3 burrows, but she had 4 and 5. On the surface, she had no relationship with the 4 great clans. This was to ensure her safety in case someone found out that she was the culprit. Although these 4 businesses had just started, and other than Total Foods and Drunken River Flow, the other 2 businesses were still unable to make a profit. The profits of the first 2 businesses were enough to support the foundation of the other 2 businesses. When the time was right, these 4 businesses would definitely be able to occupy a certain position among the people. This was because their advertising and business methods were different from those of this era. They were novel and could move the hearts of consumers. They knew the real needs of consumers. Therefore, sooner or later, they would become popular. Every meeting lasted for more than an hour. She was concise and comprehensive, and everyone expressed their opinions. It was very efficient. One meeting after another, from when the sun was high in the sky to when the sun was setting in the west, all the meetings ended. After every meeting, those stewards would be secretly sent away by her in order to prevent others from discovering their whereabouts and their relationship with the Chu estate. They had been hidden from the start. In the end, even if someone suspected them and wanted to investigate, they would not be able to do so. She did not want to walk in front of the curtains. She did not need too much attention. She only wanted to be the controller behind the scenes. After sending away the steward of the last meeting, Chu Qingyan turned to look at the people standing beside her. Xining, Yang Xiaohuan, Jin Ling, and Su Qi. Did you all understand the meeting just now? Did you all remember the things to pay attention to? She asked lazily. The 4 of them nodded. Yes. Xining, you will be responsible for the connection between Total Foods and Delicacies. Xiaohuan, in addition to continuing the management of the products and the connection between Drunken River Flow, Su Qi will be responsible for Le Xiaoyao. Chu Qingyan then turned to Jin Ling. Jin Ling, in addition to the business of the bank, you will also be responsible for the connection between Jubao and Jin Ling. When I find someone, I will take over the business of Jubao. For now, you will have to work a little harder. After all, there are all kinds of people in the casino. Jin Ling's face fell. In such a short time, he was given so much work. It was as if he was going to be split into 2 or 3 people. Could he complain to his master? But he calculated the risks, and it seemed that the feasibility was not high. Maybe his master would not listen to him. Chu Qingyan read his thoughts from his sad face. She rolled her eyes and then said, "There are a lot of things to do in the wine shop. Xiaohuan, if there is something you don't understand, you can discuss it with Jin Ling." Jin Ling's gloomy eyes suddenly brightened. At this time, Xiaohuan nodded in agreement, and his expression changed. Chu Qingyan did not miss the change in his expression and slightly raised the corner of her mouth. Xining and Su Qi saw it clearly. They could not help but silently mourn for Jin Ling. This person was betrayed by their master and he did not even know it. After explaining everything, Chu Qingyan waved her hand and let them go. She tidied up the account book on the table, then walked out of her meeting room leisurely and walked towards Xiao Su's courtyard. Today, she had completed a big thing in her heart. She could not wait to share it with the ice cube. But halfway there, she was told that he was not in the courtyard and had gone to the tea house. She turned and walked in another direction. She went up the escalator, turned around and stepped on the wooden plank. Then, she took in the scenery in front of her. A handsome and noble young master in a thin black robe was holding a teapot in one hand and a teapot in the other. The teapot was slowly tilting towards the cup on the tea table. Such an elegant scene, she could not bear to go forward, for fear of destroying the beauty. But in the end, she still went forward. She did not feel thirsty at first, but when she saw such a handsome man, she inexplicably felt her throat itch. No, to be exact, it should be her heart that was itching. "Why did you pour 2 cups? Did you know that I was coming?" She glanced at the tea table and said in a slightly surprised tone. Xiao Su put a cup in front of her and raised his eyebrows. Your footsteps. Chu Qingyan understood. She almost forgot that this person had excellent hearing. She took the cup and sniffed it. It was fragrant and pleasant. She took a small sip. It was slightly astringent in the mouth and slightly sweet in the throat. The fragrance lingered in her mouth, and she could not help but ask for another cup. Xiao Su handed his cup to her. His gaze landed on her satisfied little face. Thinking of her light footsteps just now, he said mildly, "Today's meeting should be very smooth?" "Of course. Don't you know who trained all these people?" She wanted him to praise her for training so many people. "Indeed, I was the one who trained you. I know better than anyone else." Xiao Su deliberately ignored her expectation of being praised and replied with a slight smile. Chu Qingyan's face darkened. The ice cube was really narcissistic all the time. Chapter 859. Xiao Su raised his hand and lightly tapped her nose when he saw her expression. He smiled and said, "You're my disciple. You'll only surpass me in the future." His words successfully turned her gloomy mood around. "Of course." Then, as if she had opened her mouth, she spoke her mind. Xining had been with her for 5 years. Although she didn't usually ask her to do anything important, she had been influenced by her behavior for many years. In addition to her deliberate teaching, Xining was already different from her peers in the capital. She was usually lively in front of her, but she was confident and prudent outside. In Lianqing, Xining managed the household's affairs with the housekeeper. This time in Jiangnan, Xining was already able to take charge. That was why she handed over a business to her. In fact, it was also to train her. Xiao Huan had studied many business books with her mother since she was a child. With the knowledge from these books and the practice by Jin Ling's side for more than half a year, her ability had been stimulated. She was looking forward to what kind of surprise Xiao Huan would bring her next. There was no need to talk about Jin Ling. He had been managing Big Ice Cube's bank for so many years. His ability was not a problem. Su Qi was a treasure that she had dug out from Jiangnan's Xiao-Lai cavalry. Although she was a woman, her ability was not inferior to that of a man. She was good at disguising herself. She could be gentle and strong. She was very suitable to work for her outside. That was why she handed Le Xiaoyao over to her. She talked until her saliva was flying, and she couldn't stop talking. The person beside her listened carefully and handed her tea from time to time. The two of them sat together and were exceptionally harmonious. After that, she gulped down a large cup of water and turned to ask, "Big Ice Cube, what do you think of my arrangement?" She said so much because she was actually a little nervous. Before she did anything and before she saw the results, she was not confident in the depths of her heart. However, in front of others, she hid this nervousness very well and maintained her confidence to give them confidence. Only in front of Big Ice Cube would she put down all her defenses and lay out her worries for him to see. Xiao Su raised his hand and stroked her cheek with his fingertips, wiping away the water stains on her face seriously. After retracting his hand, he said slowly, "Your arrangements are all based on their personalities and abilities. There's no problem with the general direction. What you have to pay attention to are the small issues. Whole Foods and Drunken River Style are taking the normal business route. Most of their competitors are open and above board. Other than Jubailai and Happy Carefree, there's no big problem." She had considered all of these. It's indeed difficult for Zhu Baolai and Le Xiaoyao to implement, especially in the early stages. "I'm not worried about their business, but I'm afraid that someone will cause trouble." Although Jubailai was a casino, it couldn't be defined as gambling. The games played inside were different from those in ancient times. Although there were dice games, most of them were brought over from modern times and improved. For example, Do Diju, Ludo chess, jumping pearls, mahjong, volleyball, fitness, and so on. It was very novel. So as long as one had played it before, it would be easy to fall in love with these games. As for Happy Carefree, although it was a brothel, its main purpose was to sell its skills. The girls inside were basically talented women who were proficient in at least one of the 4 arts. The customers who entered were flirtatious but not obscene. What she was worried about was that the bosses of normal casinos and brothel businesses would definitely have strong backing. That was why the people who entered would not dare to cause trouble. After all, it could be said that those who came to these places were either rich or powerful. It was also because of this that once people without a strong family background got involved in these businesses, they would be easily ostracized or be hindered by others. If she revealed her identity as Big Ice Cube, no one would dare to cause trouble. However, she could use anyone's identity except for his. Big Ice Cube was already feared by the Sichuan emperor. If there was a leak or something else, it would be difficult for her to establish a foothold in these businesses. I have a way to ensure that you won't have any worries. Xiao Su understood what she was thinking. He picked up the teacup that she had drunk from and brought it to her lips. She wanted to remind him that she had just drunk from this cup, but it was already too late. She blinked and ignored the heat rising from her ears. She tried to look at him with a straight face. Borrow someone's name. Xiao Yao. That name is so familiar. Wait, isn't that His Highness the Second Prince? Xiao Su continued to sip his tea as he admired the changes in her expression. From shock to joy and then to doubt, Chu Qingyan widened her eyes and asked, "Is it really okay to steal someone else's name? Won't I be beaten to death by His Highness the Second Prince?" He dares? Xiao Su raised his eyebrows slightly. Chu Qingyan silently said in her heart, "He doesn't dare to hit you, but he will hit me. Although I think this is a good idea and I plan to use it, I still feel a little guilty." Chu Qingyan grinned, not showing the slightest bit of guilt. This isn't the first time he's taken the blame, so he's probably used to it. Ah. She raised a few questions above her head. He can get used to it? At this time, Xiao Su slowly dispelled her doubts. Back then, the Su family bank used his name. I just didn't expect that third imperial brother would accidentally find out that I was the one behind it. Haha, I didn't expect you to have such a good relationship with the second prince. Chu Qingyan was completely relieved. When the time comes for you to make a profit, just pick something good to bribe him. He's used to being free and unfettered. If the troublemakers know of his identity, they won't be suspicious and will be afraid. Thinking of this third imperial brother, Xiao Su still felt a slight headache. Chu Qingyan readily agreed. But she didn't know that when the time came, she would feel like she had met a big drunkard who wouldn't leave her drunken river flow. After dealing with the big stone in her heart, Chu Qingyan felt that the sky had become clearer, the wind had become gentler, and she felt more refreshed. Big Ice Cube, when I'm rich, let's change our names. You don't want to be Lord, and I don't want to be a princess. Let's just be a pair of leisurely lovers, traveling the mountains and rivers. When we like lively places, we'll walk among the people. When we don't like to walk, we'll find a paradise, fishing and growing flowers. What do you think? She sat by his side, smiling as she looked at him. He didn't care if others said that he had to rely on a woman to support him. Hearing such a trusting answer, her heart warmed. Her gaze fell on his face, and the feeling of love that had been buried in her heart all this time surged up. This way, you don't have to wear this broken mask anymore. You can live openly under the sun. What do you think? Her hand touched the tie behind his head. Her fingertips slightly hooked, and the tie was untied. His mask was easily taken off, revealing his peerlessly handsome face. He had always known that her heart ached for him. His eyebrows were like a painting, and his smile was tinged with happiness. Chapter 860. Shallow joy was a deep love. In Chu Qingyan's heart, what made her happiest was that she often thought about how she would live with him in the future. As for Xiao Su, the happiest thing was that he would be involved in every plan of her future life. Xiao Su was not a person who revealed his emotions. However, whenever his face showed some of his inner emotions, it was enough to surprise people. But for Xiao Su, the only person who could make him treat her sincerely and let his guard down was the person in front of him. Then let's agree that when the time comes, we'll leave everything to Huoling and little Huan, and then we'll be a pair of hands-off shopkeepers. She held her face and made a look of longing, but she quickly put away this expression and leaned over to look at the person in front of her with some emotion. Big Ice Cube, 5 years ago, when I was still in Mao Village, I didn't dare to imagine that there would be a day like today. 4 years ago, when I was wandering around Junlan, Jiang, and Shang countries and racing with the god of death, I didn't dare to imagine what the future would be like for us. Now, I have a kind of happiness that comes after suffering. As she spoke, she pressed her forehead against his. Her eyebrows curved into a crescent moon, which was very cute. When he heard the 2 words Mao Village, Xiao Su's eyes moved slightly, but the arc was very small. Even Chu Qingyan, who was close to him, did not notice it. When we get married, I'll tell you a secret. He smiled faintly. Okay. She nodded. She was not in a hurry to know at this moment. Xiao Su touched her head, indicating that she was very obedient. In fact, what the little fellow said just now also caused ripples in his heart. At the time when the imperial edict was issued, he was gradually feeling hopeless about life. He wanted to exile himself for the rest of his life, but his method was different from Xiao Yao's physical exile. He was exiling his heart. After that, he came into contact with the little fellow and took her under his wings. He thought that since he was the one who had led her into the trap, he should protect her well. He didn't want to see her being bullied, lonely, or wronged. Thus, his numb heart gradually became aware. So he had thought afterwards, in despair. Perhaps, in this lifetime, he would not be able to obtain the warmth of blood. But with this child by his side, perhaps he would not be so lonely. He even thought of raising her as his own daughter. He wanted to raise her and give her the familial love that he had never experienced before. Later on, he realized that she was the one who made him feel the warmth of home, the preciousness of family, and the support and tenderness of love. Gradually, his heart that had been sealed for a long time learned how to open its doors. Quietly, unknowingly, it could not help but welcome her in and take root there. It turned out that all the loneliness was for the sake of waiting for someone. A flower, a world, a leaf, a pursuit, a song, a sigh, a lifetime for one person. He thought that he would never mention these words to her in his lifetime. Thank you for your hard work while you were poisoned. At that time, he knew that in a place where he could not see, she would secretly cry. This was what the fire spirit had told him. How could that be? Back then, it was because you wanted to save me that you got hit by the arrow. In the end, you were the hero who saved the damsel in distress. While she was praising him, she also spared no effort in praising herself. Xiao Su could not help but laugh. The hardships in the past might have been very painful at the time, but once it was over, thinking back on it, it was all proof of love. Just like how water accumulated into a river and soil accumulated into a mountain, if it were not for the accumulation of those bits and pieces, the 2 of them would not have interlocked their fingers so tightly. The 2 of them looked at each other, honest and sincere. She clearly remembered that when they first met, there was always a kind of loneliness in his beautiful eyes that no one else could see. After so many years, she finally worked hard to let the warm light occupy the darkness in his eyes. When his arms wrapped around her shoulders, she took the opportunity to sit on his lap. She leaned on his shoulder and smiled in satisfaction. Big Ice Cube, have you heard of a saying? Xiao Su did not answer, because he knew that every time she asked this, she did not want the listener to give an answer. He only needed to listen. You are never alone, because you don't know that in this world, there is always someone who is working hard to walk to your side. Her clear and gentle voice, in this brilliant season, was like a stream that slowly flowed from upstream, suddenly pouring down from the cliff. It was deafening, and the sound knocked on people's hearts. Those who came close felt as if their souls were about to be shaken. Xiao Su subconsciously exerted strength in his arms and pulled her into his embrace. How could he not understand what this little fellow was saying? After so many years of telepathy, he always knew. The person who had been walking towards him was right in front of him. After Chu Qingyan finished speaking, she leaned on him quietly, enjoying the peace and tranquility of the moment. She remembered that he had once said that a person's life was very long, but one day was one day less. Only by not letting someone down would one not leave any regrets. So she would seize every moment, so that she could look back and regret in the future. The two of them snuggled together, spending the last bit of time before the sun set in the west. Xiao Su's gaze fell on the last ray of light on the mountain in the distance. His calm heart suddenly had a trace of unease, and he couldn't help but frown. Feeling the hand caressing her back suddenly stop, Chu Qingyan opened her eyes and asked in a muffled voice, "What's wrong?" "I suddenly can't wait, I want to bring forward the date of our wedding," Xiao Su said in a calm tone. If these words were to be said by someone else, they would definitely be laughed at, saying that he was shameless. But when it came from Xiao Su's mouth, it couldn't be more serious. This was the difference in aura between people. Chu Qingyan was forcefully awakened from her daze by his words. She rubbed her eyes and stood up from his embrace, wondering if she was hallucinating. But when she met that pair of black eyes, she knew that he really did say those words. "What's wrong?" She smiled and asked. "Nothing, I just suddenly had this idea in my heart." His expression was gentle, the ends of his eyes slightly raised, gorgeous, as if he was just casually saying it. Chu Qingyan couldn't help but laugh at him, but Nyang Qin said that it's best for girls to get married after reaching marriageable age. "Why are you so impatient?" Xiao Su raised his hand to ruffle her long hair, smiling but not saying anything. She avoided his hand in disgust, and tidied up her hair. Regarding his proposal just now, she seriously thought about it, and then said with a smile, "I'm fine with it, you just have to convince Nyang Qin." After saying that, she immediately lowered her head, and her face turned red. She didn't care about those red tape. In her opinion, as long as two people were sincerely together, there was no need to care about those things. Xiao Su heard her soft and gentle voice, and his eyes fixed on her. Finally, he sighed softly. "I just said it casually." Then he hugged her shoulder, and rested his chin on the top of her head, with a pampering smile. How could he bear to let the little fellow feel wronged? Everything that a woman in this world should enjoy, he wouldn't shortchange her. Chapter 861. Perhaps it was because after waiting for so many years, their masters were finally going to get married. Marrying a beauty, the servants coming and going in the manor all had a joyous appearance. It was not because of the reward money, but because after going through so many twists and turns, their two masters had finally achieved a positive result. They sincerely hoped that the two of them would be able to hold hands and grow old together. So, Chu Qingyan had been receiving dubious gazes from everyone in the palace for the past few days. Especially Hua Ling, Turin, and the other fierce riders who had followed them the entire way. They would always look at her with a gratified gaze, and she would have goosebumps all over her body. So one day, she couldn't take it anymore and ran to complain to Xiao Su. She had him take care of these people and stop looking at her with such strange gazes. Perhaps the husband's family is more satisfied with their daughter-in-law the more they look at her. Xiao Su rubbed his chin, as if he didn't think it was inappropriate at all. Chu Qingyan's face instantly darkened. This group of people was really too much. She had already arranged everything. After her birthday, she would leave for Lian City, but she wasn't someone that could stay idle. Adding in the dubious gazes in the palace, she could only hide. She was going to be a newlywed in the end, so her face was thin. It just so happened that Higashio Motetsu asked her out, so she agreed. The two of them met on the streets. Chu Qingyan saw that Jiang Yi still looked like a decent human being. She couldn't help but shake her head. "Look at how ostentatious you are. Do you know how many ladies' eyes are about to fall out of their sockets?" Higashio Motetsu had a smile. "Same to you." Chu Qingyan knew that if she continued to argue with him, it wouldn't end, so she changed the topic. "That's right, you came back this time and disappeared for so long. What were you busy with?" Higashio Motetsu's hand that was playing with the fan paused for a moment, but he returned to normal in the blink of an eye, catching up on sleep. "I've been on the road day and night for so many days, it's almost breaking my old bones." "Che, rather than being like this, it's better to spend more time on the road. Isn't it because I want to see you as soon as possible?" Higashio Motetsu said half-jokingly. Chu Qingyan glanced at him. 9 out of 10 lies. After she finished speaking, she took large strides and walked towards the hibiscus pavilion. Jin Xen followed closely behind her. Higashio Motetsu looked at her back, and the frivolous look on his face faded away. He muttered to himself, I always say 9 sentences to others, but only 1 sentence to you. After saying that, he also felt that it was a little pretentious, so he shook his head and followed with a smile. When she arrived at the Hibiscus Pavilion, the shopkeepers and waiters inside were all very familiar with her. They all greeted her warmly and then continued to entertain the customers in the shop. Higashio Motetsu sized up the shop and asked, You've expanded the shop? Chu Qingyan was inspecting the products. When she heard his question, she casually replied, Back then, the shop was too small. When there were too many customers, it couldn't be expanded. So after discussing with Xioli, we simply bought 2 or 3 shops next to it and opened up the walls, expanding the entire space. She paused for a moment and asked doubtfully, Didn't you come to take a look these few days after you came back? In any case, you contributed a little back then. Why do I feel like you're more of a hands-off shopkeeper than I am? Higashio Motetsu laughed a little obnoxiously. With you guys around, what's there to worry about? I'm just waiting to count money until my hands get cramps. Chu Qingyan sneered, Be careful, or I'll get Xioli to deduct your mining fees. After she finished speaking, she walked inside. At this time, Xioli and Yen Luo should be in the backyard. Higashio Motetsu chuckled and followed her. When they arrived at the backyard, everyone was surprised to see Higashio Motetsu. When did you come back? Why didn't you say anything? You came back just in time. Business has been booming recently, and we're short of manpower. Higashio Motetsu begged for mercy. Why do I feel like I'm going to be a coolie as soon as I come back? If I had known, I wouldn't have shown up. If you don't show up, your dividends won't be counted. Hua Xioli threw the account book at him and gestured for him to take a look. Higashio Motetsu opened the account book in confusion as everyone teased him. The smile on his face quickly turned into surprise. He flipped down and finally stopped at a line of numbers. His eyes were filled with shock. Not bad, this is the profit of the continuation product for nearly half a year. Are you shocked? Hua Xioli said proudly. Higashio Motetsu sneered, Looks like I won't have to worry about the rest of my life. Then from today onwards, you'll have to work hard for us. Cheng Yenluo hugged a large stack of account books and placed it heavily on his hand. Then she patted his arm to encourage him. Higashio Motetsu looked at Chu Qingyan for help, but the latter gave him a helpless response. Thus, Higashio Motetsu was sent to the side to look at the account books. There was a small open-air courtyard in the backyard. On the table, there were all kinds of pastries, tea, and wine. Chu Qingyan, Hua Xioli, and Cheng Yenluo sat there and chatted. Time flies. You're the youngest among the 3 of us, but you're about to get married. Hua Xioli sighed. Chu Qingyan blinked. Aren't you already taken? When Lord Lin recovers, he'll definitely welcome you into the family with a sedan chair. Hua Xioli's face flushed red at her words, and she clamored to tear her mouth apart. Cheng Yenluo watched the 2 of them bicker and sipped her tea at the side as a spectator. After they calmed down, Hua Xioli said, Speaking of which, I feel that Big Ice Cube marrying you is very convenient. The snacks and pastries on the table can all be provided by Whole Food Mart. As for the wine, it can all be provided by Drunken River Flow. I'm so envious. Cheng Yenluo couldn't help but laugh. If you're envious, you can ask Lord Lin to mention it to Qingyan. They can provide it together. Hua Xioli blushed again. Why was everything related to her? The person in question was still leisurely there. Cheng Yenluo propped up her chin and joked, Qingyan put in a lot of effort. I heard that the wedding dress was already made 4 years ago. Every stitch and thread was made of the finest golden silk. It took 4 whole years to weave it. If a wedding dress alone took so much effort, it's obvious that they put in even more effort in other areas. This time, it was Chu Qingyan's turn to blush. Why didn't I know about this? Cheng Yenluo smiled complacently. I overheard it when Huoling let it slip. Now I regret letting you know. If I had known, I wouldn't have said it. Hearing Cheng Yenluo's vexed voice, Chu Qingyan's thoughts had already drifted away. It turned out that Big Ice Cube was already making preparations. When it was time to return, Chu Qingyan and Qing Yanluo bid farewell to Higashio Motetsu and got into the carriage to head back to the estate. Halfway through the journey, they suddenly heard the sound of horses galloping from behind. Jean Exon calmly stopped the carriage by the side to avoid the horses. It was rare to see such a hurried group of horses on the streets. Chu Qingyan couldn't help but lift the curtain to take a look. However, the other party was too fast. She could only see the backs of a few people dressed in martial arts attire. Who are those people? Cheng Yanluo was also curious. Judging from their attire, they seemed to be from the capital, replied Su Yi, who was accompanying them. The capital? Chu Qingyan suddenly felt her right eye begin to twitch irregularly. She had a bad premonition. Chapter 862. Xiao Su sat in the study, holding the book that Chu Qingyan found last time. He was seriously flipping through it. Once he saw the main points of marriage, he would pay more attention. In the quiet afternoon, a flurry of footsteps suddenly approached from afar. The person didn't bother to knock on the door and just pushed it open. Master, something bad has happened. Huoling hurriedly ran in, followed by a frowning Turin. Xiao Su calmly continued to read the book until he finished reading it. Only then did he raise his eyes to look at the two. What's the matter? Huoling's face was impatient, but when he saw that his master was like an old monk in meditation, indifferent, he could only shut his mouth due to his master's powerful aura. He was like an ant on a hot pan, pacing in circles on the spot. When he heard his master speak, he immediately went forward to reply. Master, someone from the capital has come. It's the Assistant Minister of the Ministry of War, Sun Kun. Xiao Su slightly raised his eyebrows. Why did he come? Huoling shook his head. This subordinate doesn't know. It was the guard who came to report. However, one wouldn't come without a reason. This subordinate feels that it might be related to the battle ahead. On the side, Turin added, it seems that Sun Kun brought an imperial edict. Xiao Su's expression slightly restrained, giving off an aura that kept people away. Tell him that he's in the wrong place. Huoling and Turin looked at each other. Was their master not planning to admit his identity? However, the other party had already found this place. It seemed that he had done enough work. As expected, the guard said that he was in the wrong place. Sun Kun seemed to have planned this beforehand. He took off his outer coat, revealing the official's robes inside. Then, he knelt in front of the gate, holding the bright yellow imperial edict high above his head, silently expressing his persistence to the person inside. Xiao Su stood in front of the window, looking at the horizon with a heavy gaze. It was impossible to tell whether he was happy or angry. This Sun Kun is still as cunning as before. He knows that Master doesn't want others to know about Master's matter in Jiangnan, yet he still openly wears an official's robe and holds up the imperial edict. He wants others to discover Master's identity. He is simply too hateful. Huoling kept pacing back and forth in the room. He wished that as soon as his master gave the order, he would go out and pick that person up and throw him out. Turin couldn't bear to see him hovering in front of him, so he said, Master must be annoyed enough. Just shut up. I also want to, but there are already commoners slowly gathering outside the door. How do you want me to calm down? Master and the little princess finally found a place to stay in Jiangnan. If it is used by someone with ulterior motives like this, then everything we've done before will be for naught. Huoling became more and more angry as he spoke. Turin was silent. Huoling's words were not without reason. At this moment, the master in front of them suddenly spoke in a low voice. Let him in. Yes, Turin replied. What will come, will come. Xiao Su's face was as calm as water and his lips were pursed into a line. After a while, Sun Kun was brought into the guest hall. As soon as he entered, he saw that familiar yet distant figure. Although they hadn't seen each other for 5 years, that imposing aura was enough to make him kneel down in salute. This official greets His Royal Highness. Official Sun doesn't need to be so courteous. Please sit. Xiao Su turned around and spoke in an indifferent tone. Many thanks, Your Highness. The voice was as cold and calm as ever. Sun Kun felt the blood in his body slowly boil. He had always respected His Highness. Although His Highness was younger than him by a generation, in many aspects, age was not a factor. This official has come to find your highness for an important matter. Sun Quan didn't dare to sit down. He didn't forget that he had important matters to attend to. He was about to take out the imperial edict hidden in his sleeve when His Highness unexpectedly spoke and interrupted him. Official Sun must be tired from the long journey. This king has already ordered people to prepare a room and wine. Go and rest first. We can talk after you rest. After Xiao Su finished speaking, a servant walked in from outside the door and planned to lead Sun Quan away. When Sun Quan heard this, alarm bells rang in his heart. His Highness clearly didn't want him to read the imperial edict at this moment. Otherwise, he wouldn't have stopped him outside the residence. His palms were sweaty. No wonder the entire room was like an ice cellar when he entered. He was intimidated by His Highness' accumulated power and his legs trembled. He was only a civil official and couldn't be unyielding in front of the generals of the bloodthirsty battlefield. But in front of a great enemy, he couldn't lose the big picture for the small. Even if he offended His Highness, he still had to complete His Majesty's orders. Sun Quan suddenly knelt down and righteously met Xiao Su's cold gaze and spoke bluntly. Your Highness, you know why this humble subject has come here, and you should also know the situation on the front lines. Please listen to this humble subject. Xiao Su frowned, his expression extremely uneasy. When you were transferred out of the capital and stayed in Mount Fuji, this humble subject knew that you were very unwilling. In the past few years, the officials who supported your faction have been suppressed by the Fu family. It can be said that many people are suffering unspeakably. They have always hoped that there would be an opportunity to welcome you back to the capital. This time, the turning point has finally come. His Highness the Fourth Prince's army has been defeated again and again. The Fu family has been angry about the change of commander, but they don't dare to say anything. His Majesty has finally relented. If you agree, then we will have a chance to strike down the Fu family's arrogance. We won't have to be ostracized and suppressed by them anymore. And you can openly return to the capital and take command of the three armies again. So, I hope that your Highness will reconsider. Sun Quan's tone was very excited and could be said to be generous and inspiring. When he finished speaking, he took out the imperial edict from his sleeve and held it above his head with both hands, pious and expectant. Xiao Su maintained an indifferent expression throughout his speech. It was only when Sun Quan finished speaking that he spoke. What does the minister of the left's faction have to do with this prince? Your Highness, that's your mother's family. Sun Quan was shocked. What does attacking the Fu family have to do with this prince? Xiao Su ignored his words and continued. Your Highness, Sun Quan's lips trembled. This prince has already handed over the command medallion of the three armies. I have no intention of taking it back. Xiao Su's tone was indifferent, as if he was talking about something that had nothing to do with him. But your Highness, His Majesty has already issued an imperial edict. Do you want to defy the edict? Sun Quan couldn't help but ask. Defy the edict? Xiao Su faintly smiled. It was so subtle that no one noticed. If you're worried about being implicated, you can go back and tell my imperial father that this prince is no longer alive. Compared to what His Highness had just said, these words terrified Sun Quan even more. Could it be that His Highness wanted to give up everything, including his identity, status, and achievements? This was the first time this had happened since the founding of the Sichuan Empire. Official Sun, you should go and rest. Xiao Su didn't wait for him to answer before walking out. Sun Quan still hadn't recovered his wits. Seeing that His Highness was about to leave, he knew that if His Highness left like this, then what he had just said might come true. He didn't know where he found the strength to quickly crawl over to His Highness, but he quickly said, Your Highness, before leaving, Her Majesty the Empress had this subject give you something. Chapter 863. Xiao Su stopped and looked at him coldly. Sun Quan didn't dare delay. He switched hands with the imperial edict and took out a letter. When he handed it over, he stole a glance at Xiao Su before saying, Her Majesty the Empress said that if you are unwilling to accept the edict, This letter should be given to you. She said that of all virtues, filial piety is the most important. You will not refuse this letter. Xiao Su's cold gaze landed on the letter. She really understands Ben Wang. Sun Quan laughed hastily. When Chu Qingyan returned to the Fu, she clearly felt that the atmosphere in the Fu was a bit off. Before she could ask anyone, a group of people she had never seen before walked in front of her. She couldn't help but stop in her tracks. The people in front of her also saw her and imperceptibly sized her up. This group of people was none other than Sun Quan and his guards, who had just retreated from the reception hall. When they arrived in front of her, Sun Quan cupped his hands and bowed to Chu Qingyan, saying, "This must be the famous Chu Qingyan, young Master Chu." Chu Qingyan was surprised. Who was this person? He was dressed in an official's uniform. Could it be that he was an official by official Lin's side? This insignificant one is indeed this one. May I ask who Sir is? It was impolite not to reciprocate, so she also asked politely. Sun Quan nodded slightly and introduced himself. This one is the Assistant Minister of the Ministry of War, Sun Quan. Assistant Minister of the Ministry of War? Why was he here? Without waiting for Chu Qingyan to speak, Sun Quan said meaningfully, "When I was in the capital, I heard that there was a young talent by His Highness' side. Now that I have seen him, he is indeed a talent. The court needs talents right now. If you follow His Highness, your future will definitely be limitless." Sir is right. Although she was confused, Chu Qingyan still agreed with a smile. Coincidentally, a servant came up to lead the way. Only then did Chu Qingyan and Sun Quan part ways. However, Sun Quan's words before he left made Chu Qingyan have some guesses. Since young Master Chu has been by His Highness' side for so many years, I'm sure His Highness will listen to some of your words. I hope that young Master Chu can persuade His Highness to put the big picture above all else. Only then will his future be bright and prosperous. As Chu Qingyan walked and pondered over these words, another person walked in front of her. It was Hua Ling who was looking for her. "Hua Ling, did something happen?" Chu Qingyan didn't wait for him to speak and asked first. When Hua Ling saw her, he first let out a sigh of relief. Then he concisely told her what happened today. At the end of his words, he angrily said, "In the past, when there was nothing going on, she couldn't wait to cast Master aside. Now that something has happened, she shamelessly asked Master to come out and solve it. How can there be such a good thing?" Chu Qingyan immediately glared at him. "Be careful, the walls have ears. How could the Emperor of the 9 and 5 be so casually arranged?" Hua Ling knew that he had misspoken and immediately shut up, but his face was still gloomy. At this time, Chu Qingyan's heart was also in a mess. For this matter to appear at this time, it really made people feel vexed. Where is His Highness right now? After official Sun left, Master went back to his study and hasn't taken a single step out. Hua Ling gave a soft sigh. "Alright, I'll go take a look now." Chu Qingyan left these words and quickly headed to the study. Hua Ling looked at the little princess back and gave another sigh. He came out to find the little princess in hopes that at this time, there would be someone to accompany Master. Master's heart shouldn't be feeling good right now. Chu Qingyan quickly walked to the door of the study. When she raised her hand to knock on the door, she paused. She had been in a hurry the entire way because she wanted to see the big ice cube as soon as possible, but she was just one step away. She didn't know how to comfort him when she saw him later. To be summoned by someone like this and sent away by her own father, this feeling, no matter how big of a person's heart was, they wouldn't be able to endure it. While she was hesitating, a faint voice came from inside the door. "What are you standing there for?" She had been discovered. She bit her lip and pushed open the door. When she stepped in, there was already a smile on her face. "How did you know it was me? Your ears are so sharp." She turned to close the door and walked towards him with a grin. "At this time, other than you, no one else dares to come in." Xiao Su stood in front of the window with his hands behind his back as his eyes fell onto the distant sky. When Chu Qingyan passed by the table, she saw the letter that Hua Ling mentioned. Her eyes didn't stay on it as she walked behind him. Then she reached out and hugged him from behind when he wasn't expecting it. She pressed her face against his back and spoke in a grumbling and mischievous tone. Who told you to be so cold normally? No one dares to breathe loudly in front of you. Xiao Su gave a soft laugh. Isn't there an exception? She knew that he was hinting at her. She waved her hands in a clingy manner. How is that the same? They're afraid of you, but I'm not afraid of you. I'm different from the others. That's right, you're different from the others. He repeated her words, but it was unknown if it was a response to her words or if there was some other meaning to it. Big Ice Cube, is there something you're unhappy about? Tell me and I'll be happy. Her tone was cheerful, but behind Xiao Su's back, her eyes were filled with sorrow and pain. Xiao Su did not punish her like he usually did. His tone was still calm as he said, Don't you already know? Chu Qingyan tightly hugged his back and said in a gentle voice, That's not the same. What others say is different from what you say. If you keep it in your heart, it won't feel good and you'll get sick from holding it in. The two of them were silent for a while before Xiao Su slowly opened his mouth. Just now, Sun Kun brought news from the front lines. 4th Imperial Brothers' army has been defeated and the city has lost a lot. If this continues, the Southern Song army will soon reach the city. These days, Xiao Lai cavalry had been preparing for his and the little fellow's marriage. He did not pay much attention to the reports from the front lines, so he did not send any information to Jiangnan. If it wasn't for Sun Kuan's visit, he would not have known that the situation was this serious. So he came here to pass on His Majesty's imperial edict, to have you take Xiao Ran's place and quell the war? Chu Qingyan had already guessed it from Hua Ling's words. I don't know. As soon as Xiao Su spoke, she was stunned on the spot. What? Xiao Su turned around and allowed her to wrap her arms around his shoulders. His brows slightly raised, because I didn't accept the imperial edict. Why did this person look so normal? He wasn't as gloomy and sad as she imagined. But these words shocked her even more. Is this really okay? 9 generations of your family will be implicated. Xiao Su gently pulled her into his embrace. His tone was unfathomably calm. That imperial edict, even if I don't look at it, I can still guess what the contents are. Once I open it, I'm afraid there are many things that I can't do. Then what can we do? She was a little absent-minded. Ian, do you want me to accept the imperial edict? Do you want to hear the truth? She buried her head in his chest. Her answer was self-evident. She knew that in front of the world, she might be too selfish. That's why I had Sun Kun bring a message to Imperial Father, saying that Xiao Su no longer exists in this world. Xiao Su lightly said, Ah? Chu Qingyan was completely stunned. Chapter 864. Can I assume that you made this decision because of me? After the shock, she raised her head, her eyes still filled with shock. She thought for a bit and asked hesitantly. Xiao Su stared at her eyes, clear as a stream, always able to make the darkness in people's hearts unable to hide. It was this pair of large eyes that gave him an endless stream of energy whenever he was at a loss in his heart. Half. He replied honestly. Although it was only half, she was still very happy. Then what about the other half? Our wedding day is near. Xiao Su lovingly stroked her head. So Big Ice Cube was because of this. So half plus half, the whole thing was because of her. Her heart was suddenly filled with warmth. She raised her eyebrows and pretended to be charming as she smiled. Then can I be said to be a femme fatale? Sichuan's god of war would rather have a beauty than the common people. Tell me, when the time comes, will I drown in the spit of the world? Xiao Su was amused by her mischievous words. Then his hand followed her hair and caressed her face as he leisurely said, Then in order to win a beauty's smile, I will kill everyone in the world. With your words, I think it's worth it. She took a deep breath and said to him brightly. She quietly leaned into his embrace, neither of them saying a word. Just like that, they bathed in the sunlight that shone in from outside the window. The two of them snuggled together and their shadows were elongated on the tiles. Suddenly, she pointed at their shadows and smiled. I remember hearing a similar saying before. It's not that there's no darkness in this world, but that there's someone who helps you block the darkness behind you. I feel that these words are somewhat reasonable. What do you want to say? Xiao Su keenly sensed that there was a hidden meaning in her words, so he lazily asked. Chu Qian smiled. Big Ice Cube, I saw a letter on the table just now. It's from your mother, right? Her ability to change the topic was really stiff, but he didn't care. You haven't read it yet? You don't plan to? She continued to ask. Xiao Su followed her gaze and saw the letter lying there quietly. He was silent for a while. It was unknown whether he was answering the first question or the second one. Chu Qingyan pondered for a moment, then left his embrace. She pushed him with a smile. Go take a look. Maybe your mother has something important to tell you. What could be so important? It was just a matter of going to war. His gaze darkened and he lowered his head to look at her. You want me to go and see it? Will the letter disappear even if you don't read it? She tilted her head and smiled at him. And I know that there are many things that we can't change. Aren't you afraid that I'll abandon you and go to the battlefield after seeing it? He tried to scare her. She crossed her arms and raised her chin confidently. What are you afraid of? Your heart is mine. You'll be mine no matter where you go. You're so confident. He pinched her face. She slid down, nimbly avoiding his mischievous hand on her face. Laughing, she ran to the desk, reached out, and came back with a whoosh. She handed the letter to him. Here, I brought it for you. He frowned slightly. Before he could speak, she had already placed the letter in his hands. Take a look. Don't be so lazy. Open it yourself. Xiao Su's gaze fell on her calm smile. His eyes moved, and he finally lowered his head and began to open the seal. Very quickly, he took out the letter inside. Chu Qingyan felt that when the big ice cube took out the letter, he paused for a moment. She didn't know if it was just her imagination. Actually, she was also very curious about what was written in the letter that it would appear at such a crucial moment. Xiao Su opened the letter and glanced at it. His gaze darkened. She stood in front of him, and the relaxed expression she had shown was just a pretense. She had been paying close attention to the changes in his expression. Now that she saw his horrified expression, her heart was shocked. Could it be that there was something scary written in the letter? It made the big ice cube, who wouldn't change his expression even if the sky collapsed, reveal his emotions. When he folded the letter, he met the little fellow's nervous eyes. His gloomy heart couldn't help but relax a lot. He deliberately said, "Weren't you not afraid at all? Don't tease me. Let me see the letter." She couldn't take any jokes right now. She wasn't afraid of the big ice cube going to the battlefield, but that Empress Liang would use something to threaten him. Even though she hadn't met her future mother-in-law many times, she understood her very well. She always knew that Empress Liang didn't like her existence and wanted to kill her many times. If she hadn't safely passed each time, she would probably be playing chess with the King of Hell right now. And she had ignored the big ice cube's wishes many times to make things difficult for him. It could be imagined that this letter wasn't anything good. Xiao Su didn't tease her anymore and handed the letter to her. Don't be scared. With this warning, Chu Qingyan unconsciously swallowed. She reached out to take the letter as if it was 3 feet of white silk. She took a deep breath and then opened the letter. She solemnly read it. But even if she had prepared herself, it couldn't compare to the shock of what was written on the letter. Your Empress Mother? She suddenly closed the letter and raised her head to look at the person in front of her. She didn't know what to say. Xiao Su gave a self-deprecating smile. Now you know what she's capable of. This is why I don't read it. Just reading it once makes my heart feel suffocated. Chu Qingyan couldn't resist throwing herself at him. Big Ice Cube, my heart aches for you. There were only a few words written on the letter, but each word was like a needle stabbing into a person's heart. The general meaning was that this campaign was a chance for him to regroup and return to the capital. If he didn't grasp it, he wouldn't have a place in Sichuan in the future. When Xiao Ran was made the crown prince, the Liang family would be suppressed. The things she had worked hard for her entire life would be wasted. Also, she was the empress. If her son couldn't become the crown prince, she would be ridiculed by the world. Since he knew the result, It was better to end himself early and avoid this foul air. So was this using death to force him? He had already guessed what was written in the letter, but he only opened it to satisfy the little fellow. Sure enough, it was as he expected. But when he saw the little fellow's shocked expression, he couldn't bear it and reached out to hug her back when she threw herself at him. It's fine. I'm already used to it. It would have been better if he didn't say this. Once he said this, Chu Qingyan's heart was fiercely wrenched, as if it hurt more than if she was injured. When else? Her throat was tight and her voice was choked. He knew that he shouldn't have said that. He sighed. When we left Shang country. Chu Qingyan pursed her lips. Big Ice Cube, you're so pitiful. Xiao Su smiled. What's there to be pitiful about? Last time she said this, wasn't she still in charge of her harem? Chu Qingyan nodded, but she was still worried inside. As the saying went, of all virtues, filial piety was the most important. Empress Liang's actions were actually trapping Big Ice Cube for being unfaithful, unrighteous, and unfilial. This move was truly too terrifying. Chapter 865. Big Ice Cube, what do you plan to do? Empress Liang's letter was so straightforward and full of threats. Chu Qingyan frowned, her eyes filled with deep worry. She couldn't help but sigh. Empress Liang's desire for control was too strong. She wasn't worried about the current situation, but about the future. If Empress Liang's thoughts were still on seizing power, then she couldn't imagine whether she would forcefully interfere in her life in the future. The answer might be yes. Xiao Su thought that she was worried about his decision. He rubbed her head and said with a smile, "Didn't I already tell you the answer? I'll make Xiao Su completely disappear from this world. Didn't you want to go out for a walk? Soon I can take off my mask, take off this identity, and be a pair of lovers with you." He was clearly talking about the longing she told him in the tea house a while ago. She should be happy that her wish was fulfilled, but she felt even more sad and distressed. Giving up her identity was denying her past. This feeling was very uncomfortable. Big Ice Cube, go and receive the decree. She suddenly looked up and fixed her gaze on him. Her gentle gaze burst with a resolute light. He stared blankly. I knew, when a person is born, there are a few things that they can't decide. Two of them are their parents and their background. Even if the identity of Xiao Su disappears, your parents still exist. The memories of your past identity are still in your mind. Big Ice Cube, those things are engraved in your body and soul. It's something that we can't escape from. Quelling the war. In today's world, who else but you can do it? You're the god of war that everyone trusts. That proves that other than you, no one else can save the common people from the fire and water. Not only do I need you, the common people caught in the flames of war also need you. I really want to be selfish, but I can't be selfish. I don't want to be your stumbling block. Her voice recovered from its hoarseness to its clarity. There are some things that we don't want, but we can't tolerate others taking them away and then clamoring. Let's go take back what belongs to us. Whether it is military power, honor, or hot-blooded myself. The thick black color in Xiao Su's eyes slowly dissipated as she spoke each and every word, from thick to light, from black to clear. Can you bear to part with me? He already had an answer in his heart. He buried his head in her shoulder and smelled her fragrance, as if he could gain strength by doing so. Chu Qingyan sniffed and said frankly, I don't want to, but I have no choice. The emperor has already given the order. I cannot disregard your life and frame you for disloyalty. In the past few years, you have always been conscientious in serving the people. I cannot let your efforts in the first half of your life go to waste and frame you for disloyalty. Some things are better safe than sorry. You only have one mother. I cannot let you be unfilial. I don't care about your reputation, because everything you have is mine. Why would I despise myself? But I can't let you bear the infamy of being disloyal, unrighteous, and unfilial. You don't care, but I care. So, she blinked away the tears in her eyes, but her eyes became even brighter. Xiao Su felt that those eyes were even more dazzling than the scorching sun on the horizon. I bet on the marriage contract. When you return in triumph, Give me a grand wedding. At that time, I will be awe-inspiring. You are the hero of the Sichuan, then I will be the hero's wife. That is something that others can only envy. In any case, I have already decided on you, so no one can snatch you away, right? He knew that she said so much because she did not want him to feel guilty. You don't want me to betray the emperor, you don't want me to betray the world, and you don't want me to betray my parents, but in the end, I betray you. This little fellow had always been righteous. He did not want to see her like this. Ian, if only you weren't so sensible. Xiao Su sighed softly. She put her hands behind her back and pouted. Isn't it good to be sensible? This will save you a lot of trouble. I'd rather you have trouble. He looked at her and his tone became much more serious. When did you make this decision? Chu Qingyan blinked. When I heard Hua Ling say that someone came from the capital. He was stunned and then the coldness in his eyes softened. So it was this early. He thought it was after she saw the contents of the letter. Strike while the iron is hot and go find official Sun. I think he will be overjoyed later. She urged him. She was holding on with her anger, afraid that she would not be able to hold back and regret it later. Xiao Su turned to look at the setting sun outside. The expression in his eyes kept changing. Finally, when the dust settled, he took her hand and calmly said, "Let's go." "All right, I'll go with you to receive the decree." She felt the strength in his fingers and tried her best to smile. In the living room, Sun Quan had been restless in the room earlier. When he received Xiao Su's orders, his heart was in a mess. He did not know why this prince who did not play by the rules was looking for him. But there was a faint expectation in his heart. He anxiously walked over until he reached the living room. He saw two people sitting on the left and right of the main seats. One was His Highness and the other was Chu Qingyan, who he had met once in the courtyard. He was originally surprised that Chu Qingyan was sitting on the same level as His Highness. He was about to call out when he heard His Highness speak. "Did you bring the imperial decree?" Xiao Su looked at him with an indifferent expression. "Imperial decree? I brought it. This subject always carries it with him." Hearing this, Sun Quan forgot what he wanted to say and replied in a pleasantly surprised voice. "All right, read it." When Xiao Su's words fell, the two of them stood up and walked to the center of the living room. Sun Quan had not come back to his senses at all as he stared at the two people in front of him with his mouth wide open. It was only when Xiao Su impatiently frowned at him that he came back to his senses. His fingers trembled as he took out the imperial decree and slowly opened it. Xiao Su lifted his clothes and kneeled down. To the side, Chu Qingyan also followed suit and knelt down. By the will of the heavens, the Emperor summons. Southern Blue has invaded, burning, killing, plundering, and committing all kinds of crimes. Cities have been lost and the people have lost their homes. In the face of national calamity, everyone has a responsibility. Xiao Su has quelled many wars and is brave and skilled in battle. With rich experience, he is worthy of the title of Great General who pacifies the South. You will be in charge of the 3 armies. You will head to the battlefield today and recover lost territory. You will strike the enemy head-on and annihilate them all. This is the imperial decree. Although Sun Quan tried his best to suppress the wild joy in his heart, the raised tone of his voice still revealed his thoughts. "General who pacifies the South, please receive the imperial decree." Sun Quan said very respectfully. Xiao Su reached out to receive the imperial decree. "I receive the imperial decree." Chu Qingyan stood up with him. Looking at the imperial decree in his hand, she felt that the bright yellow was a bit dazzling. At this time, Sun Quan took the battle robe from the imperial bodyguard behind him and held it in front of Xiao Su. This silver moon battle robe has finally returned to its rightful owner. Xiao Su glanced at Chu Qingyan. Chu Qingyan very consciously stepped forward to receive the sparkling silver battle robe. What a dazzling appearance! "Your Highness, I will leave the safety of the country to you." This humble subject dares to ask, when will you depart to the front lines to meet with the 3 armies? Sun Quan couldn't hide his joy as he asked. "We'll discuss it later." Xiao Su replied indifferently. Then he waved his hand to have someone send him out. Sun Quan knew that it wasn't easy to get him to accept the imperial decree, so he didn't care about these small matters. However, while he was happy, he was still a bit puzzled. Why did His Highness change his mind in just a few hours? Was it because of that letter, or because the young man standing beside him? Chu Qingyan felt his gaze on her and smiled back at him. Sun Quan hurriedly bowed and left. Chapter 866. Those who were familiar with Xiao Su and Chu Qingyan's identities rushed over after Sun Quan left. The most dissatisfied was Qing Yenluo. Why did the entire world change after I went back to take a nap? What is that old emperor trying to do? What are those ministers doing? They only know how to shout when there's nothing to do? Are they just eating the imperial rations and not doing anything? Go fight your own battles. Why are you pulling our people? Ethereal quickly pulled her back. Don't talk so much. Be careful that the walls have ears. Qing Yenluo shook off his hand, but she still listened to him and remained silent in a fit of pique. The most worried was Chu Mu's mother. On this battlefield, swords have no eyes. Moreover, I've heard that the Southern Blue people are incomparably savage. Your Highness must be extremely careful. Chu Mu's father muttered, What is there to worry about? What is the Southern Blue Army? They're not even enough for Xiao Hai to chew on. I believe that he'll be able to catch them all in one fell swoop. Old Master Chu, it's not that we want to belittle ourselves, but the Southern Blue Army's leader is the current crown prince. We fought with him before and he's really cunning. Hua Ling said matter-of-factly. Isn't it just a housefly crown prince? Chu Mu's father muttered. When these words came out, everyone was silent for a while before they understood. They couldn't help but laugh, and the tense atmosphere eased a lot. Hua Ling sighed. This master and the young princess's marriage has already been decided. He really didn't come earlier or later, he just had to come at this time. Turin frowned and glared at him. Even if you don't speak, no one will think you're mute. Everyone avoided this topic, but this guy actually stupidly came out himself. Hua Ling knew that he had said something wrong, but although his voice wasn't loud, it had entered everyone's ears. A gloomy atmosphere spread among the crowd. Hua Ling looked at the young princess with some self-blame. No matter what, the cancellation of the marriage was his master's fault. He shouldn't have said it so bluntly. Chu Qingyan swept her gaze over the crowd. She knew that they were feeling regretful and unwilling to come at such an unfortunate time. She sighed softly in her heart. However, it was better for her to take the initiative to deal with these matters. Mother, the marriage between His Highness and I will be discussed after the war is quelled. In that case, we won't be returning to Lian City. Let's put aside the things we prepared for the marriage first. Chu Machen's mother thought about it and agreed. Xiaohuan, the two of you return the luggage that you've prepared for the journey to its original place. Then, instruct the servants to perform their duties and cancel the trip to Lian City. Xining, Lord Sun is staying in the residence. Personally bring a few servants over and let them serve him well. Instruct the kitchen to prepare good wine and dishes for Lord Sun. Even the guards by his side cannot be lacking. Xining and Xiaohuan accepted the order and left to carry it out. Chu Qingyan issued several orders in a row. It could be said that she was clear and decisive. Soon, everything was arranged. Chu Machen's mother was very gratified that her daughter was so rational that she wasn't defeated by this sudden blow. Thus, she pulled Chu Machen's father away so as not to cause trouble for the young couple. Although Qing Yenluo was angry, she also knew that it was useless to throw a tantrum in front of such a major issue. Thus, under the pull of Ethereal, she also left unwillingly. Turin, Jin Ling, Hua Ling, and the others were also discerning people. After the crowd left, they also found an excuse to leave. Not long after, only she and Xiao Su were left in the empty waiting room. From the beginning until now, she hadn't heard Big Ice Cube speak much. Chu Qingyan thought that the meaning behind the imperial edict and the ruthlessness of the emperor had been incisively and vividly expressed. She really didn't know how to open her mouth to comfort him. There were many things that couldn't be alleviated by comforting him. There were more things that needed time to heal. Big Ice Cube, what are you thinking about? She was silent for a while and asked seriously. Xiao Su came back to his senses and looked at her, his eyes full of guilt. Ayan, it's been hard on you. In fact, after today's incident, she had the right to be angry and even ask him to resist the imperial edict. However, she didn't say anything and didn't complain. From the study to here, if it weren't for her gentle counsel and a series of follow-up actions, the residents would probably be in a mess now. Grandfather Emperor had been unreliable for so many years, but in the end, he did something right for him. And that was to arrange a rare wife for him. Big Ice Cube, the wedding is just a formality. You don't have to feel that you owe me anything. Being together is more important than anything else. She thought that he was thinking about this and comforted him seriously. Xiao Su looked at her deeply. I know that there's no need to care about those worldly things, but I still want to give you a grand wedding. Not caring about it was one thing, but he wanted to openly announce to the world that this woman was the partner that he, Xiao Su, would cherish for the rest of his life. Chu Qingyan's face became shy. Big Ice Cube clearly didn't like to eat sweet things, so why did it feel like he was getting better at sweet words? Then will you properly protect yourself when I'm not here? Don't let others steal you away. When he was here, there were people trying to steal him away. Perhaps when he wasn't here, she would attract more peach blossoms for him. At that time, he would have to send more people to watch over her. What are you saying? I'm not that kind of woman who changes her mind. You don't trust my character at all. She pretended to be angry and reached out to grab his neck to show her dissatisfaction. But she suddenly felt that something wasn't right. Wait, of course I'm going with you. I didn't say that I would stay and wait for you. Chu Qingyan finally realized that she had missed something, so she quickly clarified. You're not allowed. He didn't even think about it before denying her words. What? He didn't want her to go with him. Chu Qingyan was stunned. She couldn't help but repeatedly confirm, you mean you're going to the battlefield by yourself and not bringing me along? Your mother is right. Swords have no eyes on the battlefield. If you're not careful, your life will be at stake. You'd better stay in Jiangnan and wait for me to come back. Xiao Su sensed her thoughts and said righteously. His tone was rarely serious and didn't allow her to back down. You're so heartless as to leave me alone? War isn't something that can be done in a day. It might take half a year, or even 2 years. Can you bear not seeing me for so long? Chu Qingyan complained angrily. Hearing the little fellow's words, Xiao Su's heart couldn't bear it, but he couldn't joke about her safety. He reached out and stroked her head, trying his best to keep his voice steady and not reveal any of his reluctance. Be good and stay at home. I'll end the war as soon as possible. He then added, come back safely. She didn't want to listen to him. That wasn't her original plan. Otherwise, why would she agree to go to the battlefield? She only agreed because she wanted to go with him. Chapter 867. I'm not Woof, don't keep patting my head. Listen carefully, I don't want to stay at home obediently. But before Chu Qingyan could finish protesting, Xiao Su had already patted her head and put an end to this matter. It settled then. Chu Qingyan stomped her feet and stared at his back as he left. She angrily waved her hand in the air. Too much, always insisting on doing things his own way without asking for my opinion. She muttered to herself and felt endless sadness. How can I be assured to let you go alone? She pursed her lips and her expression was cold. Her previous urgency was swept away and she calmed down. It's not that easy to leave me behind. After Xiao Su left, he gathered Hua Ling, Turin, and the others and locked them in the study for the entire night. When the door opened and everyone came out, the moon was already high in the sky. Looking at the courtyard that was particularly cold and cheerless, Xiao Su couldn't help but ask the servant guarding the side, where's the princess consort? After the young princess consort had dinner, she went to Your Highness' room to pack her luggage with the servants. The servant immediately replied. When Xiao Su heard this, he let out a sigh of relief. Fortunately, the little fellow didn't continue to argue with him about going to the battlefield. Jean Ling, who hadn't left yet, looked at his master with some hesitation. They also knew about what happened in the guest room today and couldn't help but ask, "Master, do you really intend to let the young princess consort stay in Jiangnan? When marching to war, we can't bring women along. And you also know that this time, it bodes ill rather than well." What they were discussing tonight was about the battle at the front line. Those delayed battle reports were placed in front of him one by one. Only then did he know that this time the battle had already reached this degree of severity and couldn't be delayed. This subordinate understands. Hualing wanted to say something more, but was stopped by Turin's gaze. He thought that it was useless to say more, so he immediately went to handle the matter. Turin said after Hualing left, "Master, don't worry. This subordinate will send more people to protect the little princess consort. I won't let anyone have any ideas about her." Previously, when the young princess consort was by his master's side, she did not attract much attention. After all, his master had retired to Lianqing. Now that his master had regained control of the three armies, some people with active thoughts would probably have their eyes on the young princess consort. Therefore, it was necessary to be prepared. Yes, we can't let the princess consort out of Xiao Lai's sight. We have to pay special attention to the Liang family and the Fu family. Xiao Su instructed. He didn't want his backyard to catch fire while he was charging to the front line. In the past, he had looked down on men who were short-tempered in love. Now that he had experienced it himself, he finally understood what it was like. Love was a poison. It was addictive and would produce emotions that had never been experienced before. It was just that it was not known to outsiders. Turin knew that his master was afraid that the empress would take the opportunity to capture the young princess to threaten him, or get rid of the young princess to stop his master's thoughts. The Fu family was probably thinking of the former. After he agreed, he hurriedly left. His master was going to leave tomorrow. Time was tight. He had to make good use of the time to make arrangements. After his subordinates left, Xiao Su slowly walked towards his own courtyard. He had lived in Jiangnan for almost half a year. Although it was not as long as he had lived in Lianqing, he could not be more familiar with every tree and flower in this manner. What thoughts did he have in the beginning to decorate this garden? Now, as he looked at the garden full of spring, his lips curled up and revealed a trace of nostalgia. He didn't know when he would come back next time. Thinking of this, he couldn't help but smile. He must have been infected by the little fellow. In the past, when he was wandering around, he didn't have this kind of reluctance. Back then, the mansion of the King of England in the capital, the mansion of the Prince of Lianqing, and now the mansion of Jiangnan. It must be the existence of the little fellow that gave him one home after another, so he became sentimental. He laughed softly. Apart from being emotional, there was also a trace of melancholy. Forget it. He would go and see the little fellow. Because time was tight, when he left in the afternoon, he saw the two streams of tears in her eyes and didn't have time to comfort her. But more than that, he was afraid that when he saw her tears, he couldn't help but be soft-hearted and agreed to go with her. When he returned to the courtyard, it was brightly lit. There were a few servants walking back and forth in his room. The window reflected the shadow of the little fellow instructing the servants to tidy up. He stood outside the door and watched for a while before going up the stairs. Chu Qingyan was still thinking about what was missing when she saw the black figure slowly walking in from the corner of her eye. Her eyes flashed. She was about to throw herself at him, but then she remembered his indifference in the afternoon. She stopped in her tracks and pretended not to see him. She continued to instruct the servants to tidy up. As soon as he came in, his eyes fell on her. How could her little movements escape his eyes? He chuckled in his heart and calmly walked to her side. Going to war, not to play. You don't have to bring so many things. Otherwise, it will be a burden on the battlefield. Xiao Su looked at the large and small bundles on the table and said in surprise. They couldn't be counted with 10 fingers. Chu Qingyan thought about it and agreed. She was really confused because she was too concerned. She ordered the servants to open the bundles again and pick out some necessities to bring. The servants also had good eyesight. The master of the house was going to travel in the next few days and didn't have much time to stay with the mistress. So after they finished tidying up, they immediately retreated and left the room for the couple. I'm almost done. You should rest well for the next few days. I'm also going back. Chu Qingyan treated him as heir and turned to leave. She didn't even look at him. When she passed by him, her wrist was suddenly grabbed. She couldn't help but stop and slightly pursed her lips. "Ian, I'm leaving early tomorrow morning." This was the decision he made after reading the battle report in the afternoon. Since he decided to leave, he couldn't delay it any longer. Chu Qingyan snorted, "You're not bringing me. What's the use of telling me this?" Xiao Su smiled. He didn't care about her anger and continued, "Your birthday is in 5 days. I can't spend it with you." I know, she said a little impatiently. He thought she would be disappointed, but he didn't expect her to be so open-minded and not complain at all. He felt even more guilty, but he didn't show it on his face. He took a step and stood in front of her. His eyes were overflowing with warmth. "I can only give you the present for your coming of age in advance." As he said this, he was about to enter the room, as if to take the present. Chu Qingyan suddenly grabbed his sleeve. "I don't want to receive the present in advance." Then, he thought about it and decided to give it to Mother Chu. When the time came, he could pass it to her. But the person in front of him didn't let him finish his words and interrupted, "I only want to receive the present from you personally." Xiao Su frowned. Then he could only give it to her after the war. Chu Qingyan snorted in her heart. "Don't worry, I will personally receive the present from you on that day." Chapter 868. Perhaps it was because they were about to part, Xiao Su wanted to spend more time with her, so he held her hand and strolled around the courtyard. It was already summer and the weather was a little stuffy. In addition, there were many things that had yet to be resolved, so Xiao Su's heart was filled with deep melancholy. And the companionship of the person beside him was like a cool breeze, brushing away the anxiety in his heart. Standing under the pear tree, he turned around and hugged her. "Little fellow, don't you have anything you want to say to me tonight?" Along the way, the little fellow was so quiet that he was not used to it. Chu Qingyan was thinking about some things in her heart, but when she heard his sudden words, she was stunned at first, then she pouted unhappily. "What I wanted to say, you didn't agree, so I won't ask for a rebuff." Xiao Su knew that she was still thinking about the matter of following the army, and sighed lightly. "Following the army is not as fun as you think. There are many things that I don't want you to experience." Initially, he had the intention of grooming her, wanting her to have a pair of strong and powerful wings, so that he would not have to worry about her. Now that she really had the ability, he was selfish and did not want her to experience those bloody, dirty, and chaotic things. In the end, time would change people's thoughts. Just like at this moment, he only wanted her to live peacefully and happily. "If you don't want me to go with you, then don't talk to me." She did not intend to pay attention to him, and her hands struggled in front of his chest, wanting to push him away. Unfortunately, she did not know if it was because she did not use all her strength, or because there was a great disparity in strength, but in the end, she could only be held in his arms. Xiao Su curved his lips. "I'm leaving tomorrow. Do you really want to treat me like this?" Chu Qingyan was slightly stunned. In that laughter, there was an imperceptible expectation, but she was sharp enough to sense it. Then she pursed her lips and no longer resisted. Her hands went through his arms and hugged his waist. Her body had compromised, but her words were still stubborn. "You don't miss me at all. It must be that you don't like me anymore. You have a change of heart, you big playboy." Xiao Su was stunned at first. After digesting her words, he didn't know whether to laugh or cry. Just because he didn't take her to the battlefield, it rose to such a serious crusade. Women's thoughts were really hard to guess. Just as he was secretly laughing, the person in front of him was still rambling on about his crimes. "You've gone too far. I tried so hard to persuade you not to disobey the imperial edict, but you just abandoned me here after crossing the river. You..." His voice suddenly stopped. Xiao Su lowered his head and sucked on her chattering little mouth. With a little force from the tip of his tongue, he pried open her teeth and did not give her any chance to react. Just like that, he swept through her entire territory forcefully and domineeringly. If he allowed her to continue like this, he would probably have to spend the night with her nagging. Although this was not bad, this was not what he wanted more. With her back against the pear tree, the coolness of the tree trunk passed through her thin clothes and into her skin. She opened her eyes slightly in sensitivity. At this time, a large hand replaced the pressing of the tree bark. Presumably, he was afraid that the roughness of the tree bark would rub against her back. It was just that the scorching temperature was like the difference between ice and fire just now. First, she passively endured his attack, and was slowly led into the boundless starry sky by him. Her feet were soft, and she couldn't help but lean against him. In the end, her whole body hung on his body and she began to respond to him. The sorrow of parting, the reluctance to part at this moment, was out of control. Especially when he felt the little fellow's response, Xiao Su tightened his arms and even squeezed her into his embrace. Her appearance was deep, distant, and sincere, her skin was delicate, and her bones and flesh were even. Her face was like a hibiscus, and her eyebrows were like willows. The beauty was like a flower in the clouds. At this moment he finally tasted the sorrow of parting. In the past, leaving home to fight was just a common occurrence. It seemed to have become a habit. Now that there was someone waiting for him at home, his heart had something to worry about. After the kiss, Chu Qingyan lay on his chest and tried to breathe. Tonight, the big ice cube felt like he was going to eat her up. So forceful, so. She was too embarrassed to continue thinking. Xiao Su quietly hugged her, enjoying the tranquility and peace at this moment. If it wasn't for his rationality winning out, perhaps he wouldn't have been able to restrain himself and would have done her tonight. It was unknown how much time had passed, but at this moment, Xining hurriedly ran over. Just as she was about to speak, she saw the two masters leaning against each other. She hurriedly covered her eyes and turned around, then reported loudly, "Master, young Master Hua is here. She's waiting in the living room." After saying that, she fled in defeat. Her master and His Highness were actually doing this in public? That's not right. His Highness was about to leave. This was him expressing his reluctance to part with her master under the moonlight. She had good eyesight, so she immediately disappeared. When Chu Qingyan heard that Hua Xiao was here, she immediately struggled out of his embrace. While tidying up her messy clothes, she said to him, "Big Ice Cube, you should rest early. I still have things to take care of, so I won't accompany you. I'm leaving." Xiao Su frowned. He didn't know why Hua Xiao was here so late at night. Before he could grab her, she had already finished speaking and left without any hesitation. Looking at her hurried figure, Xiao Su furrowed his brows in obvious jealousy, which was a rare sight. What could be more important than him leaving? He thought that the little fellow would accompany him tonight, but he didn't think that. He suddenly felt like a little wife who was left out. It seemed that the little fellow wouldn't be back so soon. He put his hands behind his back and coldly said, "Let Turin and Hualing come to the study." When Hualing and Turin received the news, they were both surprised. Shouldn't Master and the little princess be enjoying their time together tonight? When they arrived at the study, they saw Master's ashen face. Turin and Hualing looked at each other. So Master was abandoned by the little princess. They couldn't help but look at their master with sympathy. Xiao Su glanced at the two and saw through their thoughts. He chuckled, but in their ears, it was like a summons from hell. "Tonight, you two go find out the Southern Blue Army's battle tactics for this prince, as well as the information of their generals. This prince wants to know exactly how many wives, concubines, and children they have." Master was actually venting his anger from being left out by the little princess on them. Didn't they say that every injustice has its perpetrator and every debt its debtor? Turin and Hualing wailed in their hearts. So the ones who should be sympathizing with were themselves. The two silently mourned for themselves as they sat on the side and dealt with the matter. On the other side, Chu Qingyan had just stepped into the guest hall when she heard a sleepy and irritable voice. "Chu Qingyan, what can't you say tomorrow? You actually sent people to dig me out of bed. Tonight I'll leave my words here. If you can't say that Wu Yin is ugly, I'll tear down this mansion of yours." No matter how big the world was, it was not as important as sleeping. Chu Qingyan knew that Hua Xiao had a bad temper when she woke up. Calling her over in the middle of the night was indeed a bit unkind, so she couldn't help but smile. Chapter 869. It's really a headache. Chu Qingyan shook her head and sighed as she walked. Hua Xiao, who was still yawning, immediately perked up when she heard that. The impatience on her face was instantly replaced by excitement. What's bothering you? Tell me and make me happy. Qingyan Luo, who was beside her, spat out the tea in her mouth. On the other hand, Lin Fengyi said calmly, "You have to be honest." Lin Fengyi must have heard about the imperial edict and reminded the people around him. Hua Xiao glared at him. "You're not interesting." "You'll know whether I'm interesting or not when we get back," Lin Fengyi replied leisurely. Hua Xiao recalled how he had treated her these past few days and blushed. This guy. Chu Qingyan didn't expect that there would be other people in the hall. She frowned imperceptibly, but her tone was very polite. "Lord Lin, are you looking for His Highness by visiting my humble abode tonight?" Lin Fengyi smiled. "No. He followed me here and said that he was worried about me walking alone at night. In any case, I have a car, so why would I wait? What His Highness?" Hua Xiao raised her hand silently and confessed. Then, she quickly sensed that something was wrong and looked at Lin Fengyi suspiciously. Lin Fengyi didn't say anything and looked at Chu Qingyan meaningfully. Chu Qingyan received Hua Xiao's intense questioning and didn't ask why she was with Lin Fengyi in the middle of the night. She strolled to the main seat and turned to look at Hua Xiao with a smile. "Xiao, there's something I haven't told you. Now that the time is ripe, I'll introduce myself again. I'm Chu Qingyan, the King of England's imperial consort personally bestowed by the current retired emperor." Throughout the entire process, Hua Xiao's mouth was wide open and she maintained this posture for a while. If Lin Fengyi hadn't reached out to help her fix it for fear of dislocation, Chu Qingyan would have been worried that she would have to face this mouth of white teeth for the entire night. Hua Xiao rubbed her sore cheeks in her sleeves and looked at her with an indignant expression. "We've been business partners and friends for so long. You hid it from me so miserably. Don't think that I'll bow to you now." Chu Qingyan knew that she had accepted her identity. She shook her head and said with a smile, "When His Highness was sent to Fuli Mountain, many people were watching our every move, so we couldn't expose our whereabouts in Jiangnan. So, I didn't mean to hide it from you. I'm sorry." Hua Xiao was considered someone who had seen the world. She nodded and said reasonably, "Actually, I've been suspecting your identity before. You're either rich or noble. I guessed correctly. After all, only the children of aristocratic families or high-ranking officials would have such a noble and unruffled aura." After saying that, she suddenly thought of something and swept her sharp gaze over the three people beside her. "Did the two of you already know? Was I the only one who was kept in the dark?" Cheng Yanluo rolled her eyes at her. "I came to Jiangnan with Qingyan. What do you think?" Hua Xiao immediately turned to Yang Xiaohuan. Yang Xiaohuan smiled shyly and said, "I didn't know at first, but I found out after I followed Master." Hua Xiao looked at Lin Fengyi. Lin Fengyi rolled up his sleeves and said with a composed expression, "I'm an important official transferred from the imperial court. What do you think?" Hua Xiao was indignant. "So I'm the one who made you happy?" Everyone laughed. Chu Qingyan smiled and said, "Sorry, don't take it to heart. I'm just being honest with you." "Stop it. Why didn't you say it earlier or later? Why did you have to dig me up to talk about this now? You must be up to something." Hua Xiao calmed down and quickly sensed that something was amiss. She snorted coldly and looked at her. She wasn't someone who could be fooled easily. Chu Qingyan shook her head inwardly. But at this moment, Yan Luo also cast a questioning look at her. She hesitated for a moment and turned to look at Lin Fengyi. Lin Fengyi leaned back in his chair even more leisurely. "Miss Chu, you don't have to be so guarded against me. I swear on Hua Xiao's name that what I saw and heard tonight won't reach Xiao Su's ears." Chu Qingyan was stunned. Could it be that he had already guessed her intentions? However, Hua Xiao's attention wasn't on this. She grabbed Lin Fengyi's sleeve and said fiercely, "Why do you have to swear on my name? What nonsense are you spouting? I'm not giving you any guarantees. Who knows, she might be betrayed by you one day. Lin Fengyi didn't seem to care that she was grabbing his sleeve. Instead, he looked at her gently. Do we still need to distinguish between each other? Hua Xiao's face instantly reddened to her neck. Her fingers subconsciously loosened. This bastard, he was becoming more and more aware of how to make use of his appearance. Even his words were so. Chu Qingyan and Cheng Yanluo rubbed their arms and shook off the goosebumps all over their bodies. They didn't expect Lin Fengyi to be such an adult. Lin Fengyi looked at the silly girl's bashful expression with satisfaction. He reached out to straighten his clothes and then continued to lean back in his chair. He looked at Chu Qingyan leisurely, as if indicating that she could continue speaking. Chu Qingyan received Lin Fengyi's signal and fell silent for a moment. Although Lin Fengyi was the Ice Cube's best friend, he was an upright person and probably wouldn't reveal anything. Moreover, he had obviously guessed her thoughts. Even if she didn't say anything, he would know. If he wanted to tell on her, she couldn't stop him. Thinking about it, she didn't say anything else. Instead, she pondered how to tell Hua Xiao her plan. Hua Xiao glanced at the person beside her. Why was this person so thick-skinned today? Didn't he see that Qingyan clearly didn't want him to know, yet he still followed her shamelessly? Normally, he would ignore Hua Xiao's complaints. However, the person who had misunderstood him was her. He didn't want to be misunderstood by her, so he thought for a moment and said, with me around, I think Miss Chu's next plan should be much smoother. Chu Qingyan's eyes lit up when she heard this. She also felt reassured. She replied, That's even better. What are you guys talking about? Hurry up and tell me the truth. Hua Xiaoli, who was listening at the side, was confused. Only Cheng Yanluo seemed to have understood something. She looked at Chu Qingyan with a teasing and probing gaze. It's like this. The imperial edict came today. His Highness is to take over the marshal's position and go to the front lines to fight the enemy. I'm afraid that I won't be able to manage the continuation of the products and some of the newly opened shops for a while. Therefore, I would like to ask Hua Xiao and Yanluo to look after the 4 major industries. If there are any problems, I hope you can help. Chu Qingyan didn't have any misgivings and directly said to everyone present. She had already asked Jin Xian and Su Yi to separate the Shaolai cavalry in the guest hall. No one would hear this at this time. Hua Xiao stood up from the chair with a whoosh. What? You're going to the battlefield? Chapter 870. Why can't I? Chu Qingyan replied generously. To be honest, the battlefield is not suitable for a weak girl like you. Won't you be scared to death? Hua Xiao had never seen her fight and thought that she was braver than her. Xining smiled. Young Master Hua, my master is good at fighting. You don't have to worry. Hua Xiao circled around her in disbelief, her eyes full of disbelief. Other than Lin Fengyi's calm demeanor and Yang Xiaohuan's incredulity, Cheng Yanluo was also taken aback. Guessing was one thing, but confirming it was another. She couldn't help but ask, Are you planning to hide it from your husband? Chu Qingyan nodded and said solemnly, So I'll have to trouble you with the following matters. After saying that, she stretched out her hand and Xining immediately handed over the paper in her hand. Chu Qingyan opened the paper and divided it into 3 copies. One copy was given to Hua Xiao, one to Cheng Yanluo, and the last one to Yang Xiaohuan. I've written everything down. I'll have to trouble you with the following matters. Cheng Yanluo looked at the densely packed words in her hand and was more shocked than the others. She knew that the imperial edict had just been issued today. She couldn't help but admire Qingyan's speed for preparing everything so quickly. Although she still had some worries in her heart, she believed that the little girl was not a reckless person. Judging from what she had done so far, she knew that she had a foolproof plan before making the decision. Moreover, with the relationship between the little girl and Xiao Su, she couldn't persuade her even if she wanted to. She might as well let her go. Hua Xiao glanced at the paper in her hand and still had some doubts. You're leaving tomorrow? Why are you in such a hurry? Why didn't I know about the imperial edict? Do you know Fengyi? Lin Fengyi smiled faintly. I received the news when you were taking your afternoon nap. Why didn't you tell me? She had embarrassed herself just now. If she had known earlier, she wouldn't have been so surprised by Qingyan's identity. Didn't you say that you wouldn't talk to me for the whole afternoon? Lin Fengyi was helpless against this silly girl who complained first. Hua Xiao knew that she was in the wrong and didn't harp on this issue. On the other hand, Chu Qingyan and Cheng Yanluo were very surprised to hear the couple's public display of affection. Cheng Yanluo's eyes widened as she looked at them. From what you're saying, is there going to be a good thing soon? Chu Qingyan was also amused as she looked at this perfect couple. It could be said that this was a typical example of a couple that had started out as a resentful couple that had turned into a perfect couple. What the hell are you talking about? Hua Xiao's face as red as a tomato? Chu Qingyan and Cheng Yanluo, who were usually sharp-tongued, could only be mocked by the two of them. How could they let such a scene go so easily? Hua Xiao gritted her teeth and looked at Lin Fengyi, who was watching from the sidelines. She fiercely tugged at his sleeve and said, "It's all your fault. If you hadn't tricked me into drinking this afternoon, would I have stayed in your residence? I don't care. Explain to me." Lin Fengyi's lips curled up as he recalled her bashful expression after drinking. He said to her intimately, "Explaining is covering up. I think it's better if I don't say anything." Hua Xiao almost fell for his smile. She got even angrier. "You're just looking for an excuse." Lin Fengyi pretended to be helpless. "All right. You did drink a lot today and then, there was a situation." A faint smile came from behind her. "And then what?" Hua Xiao stomped her feet. "This person didn't make it clear." "And then you insisted on sleeping on my bed, so, oh?" Behind her, there were a few wavy voices that deliberately dragged out their tones. "So what?" Hua Xiao made a final struggle. "I couldn't persuade you, so I could only bring you back." Lin Fengyi looked as if he had been taken advantage of and was very upset. "Oh?" Again, there were a few wavy voices that deliberately dragged out their tones. "Don't think that I can't remember because I'm drunk. Who was the one who said that he had a good antique painting in his room? That's why I fell for your trick and went with you. In the end, he had to blame himself for not being able to control himself." She couldn't go on. She felt that she couldn't stay any longer. She got up from the chair with a whoosh. Water Spirit glared at him with her bright eyes and then fled. Lin Fengyi knew that it was best to stop at a certain point. If it weren't for the silly girl refusing to take him to see her father, he wouldn't have said these words at this moment. He understood that he couldn't push her too hard. He got up and nodded to the people in the hall before chasing after her. After Chu Qingyan and Cheng Yanluo finished watching the show, they clicked their tongues as if they hadn't had enough. Cheng Yanluo smiled and said, "Back then, I never thought that Lord Lin would be mine. That's why it's said that sometimes fate can't be stopped." Chu Qingyan rubbed her chin and said with a smile. After Yanluo also left, Chu Qingyan turned to face Xiao Huan and Xining, who stayed behind. "Xining, I'll leave my parents to you. Help me take good care of them when I'm not around." Xining didn't know her plan at first, but when she thought about how close her master and his highness were, she knew that her master must be reluctant to part with them. So when her master asked her to go, she knew that her master would become his highness's right-hand woman and she would only be a burden. So she could only nod tiredly. "Master, don't worry. Xining will definitely live up to your trust." Chu Qingyan nodded with gratification. Then she continued to say to Xiao Huan, "Xiao Huan, there are many things in the residence when I'm not around. Xining can't handle it all by herself sometimes. If you have time, help her a little." Yang Xiaowan's eyes were filled with tears. If it weren't for her master's trust and support, she would probably still be the quiet and timid young miss of the Yang family. Yang Xiaohuan, who had the life of a servant, wouldn't be able to hold her head high like she was now, nor would she have the chance to try what she wanted to do. Everything she had was given to her by her master. She wouldn't hesitate to go through water and tread on fire for her master. "Master, don't say that. This is what Xiao Huan should do. The journey will be difficult and dangerous. Please take care of yourself." She choked with sobs. Chu Qingyan patted her shoulder. She was very glad that she had given her a chance. She had also given herself a chance. "Don't cry. It's as if I won't come back. Chu Qingyan teased. Master, don't talk nonsense. Master, don't talk nonsense. The two of them immediately glared at her with teary eyes. Chu Qingyan didn't know whether to laugh or cry as she begged for mercy. Okay. Don't say such unlucky things. If you have time now, help me pack my luggage. I still have things to deal with. Xining and Yang Xiaohuan left reluctantly, as if she was going to turn into a butterfly and fly away. Chu Qingyan shook her head. Her heart was also filled with sorrow. But now wasn't the time to think about this. She put down these sorrowful feelings and prepared to go to her parents' courtyard. But she saw the person who was supposed to have left waiting outside the door. Lin Fengyi. Chapter 871. Chu Qingyan was taken aback by Lin Fengyi's sudden appearance. She composed herself and asked politely, "Does official Lin have anything to say to Qingyan?" Other than that, she could not think of any other reason. Lin Fengyi studied her seriously. This girl was indeed smart. No wonder Xiao Su was so assured to leave her alone in Jiangnan. No wonder this girl dared to follow him to the front lines behind Xiao Su's back. Miss Chu, may I have a word with you? Chu Qingyan nodded without hesitation. This way, please. This courtyard had been reserved by her people earlier tonight. She was not worried that others would overhear their conversation, so Chu Qingyan led him to the courtyard. The moonlight rippled on the ground like water, and the originally stuffy air became much cooler due to the cool breeze that blew in from time to time. Perhaps because she had settled most of her worries, Chu Qingyan let out a deep breath and felt refreshed. She then turned around and asked Lin Fengyi, "Lord Lin, if you have anything to say, just say it." Lin Fengyi stood under the parasol tree. His white robes fluttered in the wind, and he had a gentle smile on his face. It was hard to imagine that such a gentle and modest young master would be a righteous and impartial court official. Thinking of this, Chu Qingyan was lost in thought. Such an unpredictable man had been taken in by her just like that. She had to admit that enemies were bound to meet. At this moment, Lin Fengyi spoke. "Miss Chu, I did come here today because I have something to say to you. However, it is not to persuade you to give up on following Xiao Su to the front lines. It is about the battle for the throne." Chu Qingyan did not know why this topic was suddenly brought up. Lin Fengyi's expression was still calm. He said slowly, "I have known Xiao Su for many years. I know his nature. I know that he does not want to be involved in the battle for the throne. Especially after you appeared, he did not want to be involved. However, I'm not doing this for Boren. Boren died for me. Even if he does not fight for the throne, someone will force him to do so." At this point, Lin Fengyi's eyes darkened. For example, the imperial edict this time. Chu Qingyan was instantly stunned. To outsiders, such words were simply disgraceful, especially coming from the mouth of such an important official. But looking at him, it was as if he was just talking about the weather. Chu Qingyan's mind quickly returned to what he had just said. She frowned slightly. "Can't you wait until the war is over before you leave?" Lin Fengyi shook his head. "Things aren't as simple as you think. Why don't you just leave from the start? Otherwise, if you get involved again, it won't be so easy to leave." Chu Qingyan did not understand. "Official Lin, can you be clearer?" He nodded and sighed softly. His Majesty does not like Xiao Su and favors the fourth prince. This is something that many people know. Sichuan has always favored the elder over the younger. In addition to Xiao Su's reputation, there is naturally a group of officials in the imperial court who support Xiao Su. There is also the Liang family. If His Majesty wants to eliminate all difficulties in appointing the fourth prince, he will have to win the support of the officials in the imperial court. Unfortunately, the fourth prince has been raised in the depths of the palace since he was young and does not have a strong foundation. This is why His Majesty wants him to take command when Nansong invades. It is mainly to let him gain a foothold in the imperial court. Unfortunately, not only did he not stop Nansong, but he also lost many cities. Chu Qingyan continued his words. Lin Fengyi nodded. "That's right. At this time, His Majesty is under pressure from the officials, and he can't find a better person to replace him as commander. He can only issue an edict to recall Xiao Su. However, in His Majesty's heart, Xiao Su has always been a stumbling block for the fourth prince. He wants to take back the cities, but he doesn't want Xiao Su's achievements to reach a higher level. His heart is very conflicted, but he has no choice. You're saying that if Big Ice wins, then he will become an even greater threat to the fourth prince's position. Then, His Majesty will see him as a thorn in his side. When that time comes, it will be disadvantageous to Big Ice. Chu Qingyan guessed as she followed his words. That's not impossible. Back then, Xiao Su had been suppressed by His Majesty and even tried to assassinate him. Lin Fengyi's lips curled, revealing a mocking smile. Chu Qingyan fell silent. It wasn't that she hadn't thought about this before, but when someone else said it out loud, she felt even more wronged for Big Ice, who only cared about the people and the country. She felt that Big Ice, who had such a biased father, wasn't worth it. Tonight, I wanted to tell you that if there comes a day when you two can't leave that abyss, and father and son become enemies, I hope you can persuade him. Lin Fengyi's voice suddenly lowered. If Chu Qingyan wasn't in front of him, she wouldn't have been able to hear him clearly. Chu Qingyan's brows trembled. You want him to back down? His originally heavy heart relaxed a little because of her angry questioning. Xiao Su's foresight wasn't bad. This little girl wasn't as weak as he thought. No, it's just that when it's time to break, it's time to break. When Lin Fengyi said this, Chu Qingyan was shocked. Wasn't he just joking? Lin Fengyi was amused by her reaction, but he quickly regained his composure. Xiao Su is filial and responsible. Even when he was hurt all over by his family when he left the capital, he didn't hate them. A long time ago, I was worried that one day his life would be ruined by his family, but when he said this, he looked at Chu Qingyan, his gaze filled with admiration and gentleness. Your appearance changed a lot of Xiao Su's thoughts. Or it could be said that in the past, he didn't think about the future, but now, he has started to plan for the future with you. So, I hope that if it's time to make a choice, I hope you can persuade him to live for himself. Either you go far away or you give it your all. After Lin Fengyi finished speaking, he looked deeply at Chu Qingyan. I believe that you can do it. Chu Qingyan murmured. This was the first time she heard so much from Lin Fengyi, and it was related to such a cruel and unknown tomorrow. Why are you telling me this? Chu Qingyan looked at him. Her surprise disappeared, and there was judgment in her eyes. As a good friend, I can't bear to see him walk down the path of no return. There's one more thing. Every man for himself, and the devil takes the hindmost. After Lin Fengyi said this, he smiled mysteriously, then nodded at her as a sign of farewell. He turned and left calmly. Xioli is still waiting outside. I'll take my leave first. Chu Qingyan looked at the back of his white robe and frowned slightly. She didn't understand his last sentence. It seemed like a joke, but it also seemed to have a deeper meaning. It was hard to grasp. It wasn't until a long time later when she saw him in the capital that she understood the meaning of his words today. Chapter 872. She had made preparations for the Fuli mountain range and the development of 4 or 5 industries at the same time just in case. She could only protect herself if she had no other choice. However, she didn't expect that it would come so quickly. It was as if there was an abyss behind her when she turned around. Lin Fengyi's words today had a huge impact on her. She was right. Going to the front lines this time wasn't a dragon's den. Going back to the capital was a tiger's den. Therefore, she had to stay by Big Ice Cube's side no matter what. Thinking of this, she was even more determined. She turned and left the courtyard, walking towards her parents' courtyard. Although it was very late at night, the lights in her parents' room were still brightly lit. The moment Chu Qingyan entered, she saw that her mother was busy with something. Her father was also pacing around the house. Only when they saw her did they stop. Kai, it's so late. Why are you here? Mrs. Chu asked. Chu Qingyan smiled. Dad, Mom, I have something to tell you. But before I say it, please be mentally prepared. Mrs. Chu and Mr. Chu didn't know why, but they nodded seriously. Thus, Chu Qingyan told them about her plan to leave Jiangnan. As expected, Mrs. Chu was shocked. Kai, you're a girl. Why would you go to the battlefield? His Highness has been through hundreds of battles. Of course, he's not afraid. Aren't you just fooling around? Mrs. Chu, who was always gentle, was showing signs of anger. Chu Qingyan knew that her mother wouldn't let her off easily. She was about to say what she had thought of on her way here when her father beat her to it. It's good to go to the battlefield. Kai, let me tell you. I used to be a great general too. You can go there and beat the enemy to a pulp. Then, you can win back a great general. Mr. Chu patted his daughter's shoulder with satisfaction. It was as if he could already see his daughter riding on colorful clouds, wearing a battle robe, and carrying a large sword. The more he thought about it, the happier he became. He immediately turned and grabbed his wife's arm. He grinned and said, as the saying goes, a good father will not have a bad son. Dan Yang, you have to believe that Kai will come back in glory. Dad, like father, like son, Chu Qingyan said softly. Mr. Chu waved his hand. Who cares what kind of father he is? You have to win back a great general's father. After being interrupted by Mr. Chu, Mrs. Chu didn't know whether to be angry or laugh. In the end, she sighed heavily and said, my daughter has grown up and grown up. I can't control her anymore. A daughter can also protect her country and her family. I've been learning martial arts and military tactics for so many years. Isn't it all for the sake of putting them to use one day? Moreover, His Highness' trip this time will be fraught with danger. I want to lend him a hand. As the saying goes, only by sharing weal and woe can we share fortune together. Chu Machen's mother raised her hand and tapped Chu Machen's nose. You are not married yet. Aren't you ashamed to say this? Chu Qingyan blushed. I'm afraid I won't be able to find someone better than him in this lifetime. Mrs. Chu shook her head. Although she was reluctant to part with her daughter, she was already an adult and had her own ideas. As a parent, it was best not to interfere. It was best to be more understanding and tolerant. Mrs. Chu took out an amulet from her sewing basket and said, this is something I made for His Highness. It's a blessing that he will be safe and sound. When your father went to the battlefield, he also carried this amulet that I made for him. That's how he was able to survive. It seems that I have to make another one tonight. Hearing this, Chu Qingyan knew that her mother had agreed. Her eyes reddened, and she threw herself into her mother's arms. I'm unfilial. I'm already an adult, but I still make you worry so much. Mrs. Chu patted her back gently with one hand and said lovingly, don't feel guilty. Stay with His Highness. It's not easy for him to be alone. Chu Qingyan nodded, choking with sobs. At this moment, Chu Machen's father mysteriously took out a small bag from the side and handed it to his daughter. Father, what's this? Chu Qingyan took it in confusion. This is a peace stone for inverted scallions. I only picked up so many. I didn't expect you to be going too. Then you two can share it. Afich. That way, your relationship won't break up. Chu Machen's father said happily. Chu Qingyan opened the bag and saw that it was filled with small stones. Although she found it funny, she was more touched. When she left, she looked back at her mother, who was surrounded by her father and sewing thread. Suddenly, she could understand the feelings expressed in the ancient poem. The thread in the loving mother's hand, the clothes on the wandering child's body. Sewing tightly before leaving, afraid to return late. She closed her eyes. When she opened them again, the tears had faded, and they were replaced by determination. She would come back. She would come back safe and sound. She and the ice cube still had a lot of things to do. In the blink of an eye, it was the second day. Because they didn't alert anyone when they first came to Jiangnan, they planned to leave quietly before the town woke up. Sun Quan also woke up early in the morning. He didn't just want to see Xiao Su off, but also wait for him to leave so that he could report back. Your Highness, I hope you'll take care of yourself on this trip. Sun Quan stepped forward and bowed respectfully. Xiao Su glanced at him indifferently. Thank you for your auspicious words, Lord Sun. This prince also has a few words for you to pass on to the left prime minister. This cold voice made Sun Quan's body tremble. He bowed even lower. Since this prince has agreed to take over the commander-in-chief's position, it doesn't mean that this prince is willing to follow his path. So tell him not to spend so much effort to pave the way and just do his job well. Xiao Su's voice was indifferent. After he finished speaking, he let him leave. Sun Quan stood up tremblingly. He bowed again and again before standing to the side. Xiao Su's expression became even more indifferent. The reason why Sun Quan came to Jiangnan to issue the decree must have been arranged by his grandfather. His grandfather did this to help him hide the fact that he left Lian City without permission. The second reason was that Sun Quan was an upright official. He couldn't be cruel to such a person. Moreover, he would more or less listen to what he said. Grandpa had a good plan, but unfortunately, his life wasn't something that could be easily arranged by others. The sky was still dark. The fire spirit and the earth spirit led Xiao Lai on their horses and silently stood at the door, quietly waiting for instructions. Father Chu, Mother Chu, and the others all looked at them with concern and occasionally gave them a few instructions. Xiao Su glanced around and found that the most important person was missing. He couldn't help but frown deeply. This little fellow disappeared last night and didn't appear today. He couldn't help but sigh in his heart. It was obvious that she was angry because he didn't let her come with him. If there was a chance, he would come and coax her. If there was a chance. Even he couldn't guarantee it. Chapter 873. Young princess consort has been working too hard recently and is exhausted. She might still be sleeping. Hualing followed his master's gaze and understood who he was waiting for. He wondered what young princess consort was busy with and why she hadn't appeared yet. However, he still explained for her, afraid that his master would be sad. Xiao Su retracted his gaze and nodded to everyone. Then, he turned to his subordinates and ordered, "Let's go." The sound of uniform footsteps and the sound of turning horses broke the silence of the night. Xiao Su was about to mount his horse when his ears twitched and his gaze turned to the gate. At this moment, a familiar figure appeared at the gate. Unfortunately, it wasn't the person he was waiting for. Xining quickly ran to Xiao Su and said with an unnatural expression, "Your Highness, my master asked you to be careful. She's still angry, so she won't be coming to see you off. She'll write you a letter when she's not angry anymore." Xiao Su's eyes flashed with understanding. He didn't know whether to laugh or cry, but he couldn't put her in danger because of a moment of soft-heartedness. He nodded. Then, his eyes narrowed and he mounted his horse. "White impermanence, black impermanence, hollow, you have to protect my son-in-law well. Also, you have to protect yourselves well." Father Chu waved his claws and said reluctantly. Hualing, Turin, and Ethereal didn't want to admit this nickname at all. They could only nod as the fierce cavalry stifled their laughter. Xiao Su raised his whip. "Let's go." His response was the neighing of the fierce horses and the sound of hooves. Men don't cry easily. He narrowed his eyes and rode against the wind into the night. Every time he left for the battlefield, he didn't think about whether he could come back alive. But this time, he had misgivings and missed her. He didn't look back. He hoped to see her again. After he left, Qing Yanluo looked up at the eaves and chuckled. He's so cruel that he won't even see him? Is he trying to make him feel guilty? Only then did everyone notice the charming figure sitting on the glazed roof tile. Chu Qingyan brushed off the dew on her body and jumped down with a smile. He's very sharp. I'm afraid that he'll see through me if I'm not sad enough. Moreover, I made him feel guilty today so that he won't be so angry when he sees me again. Chen Yanluo smiled. Not bad, not bad. You didn't let love get to your head. You're still very rational. Chu Qingyan shrugged, then turned to her parents and said, "I'm leaving too. Take care." Mrs. Chu's eyes reddened, and her lips trembled. She had so much to say, but in the end, she only said, "Be careful." Chu Qingyan's eyes reddened. She smiled and said, "I'll be back soon." Mrs. Chu wiped her eyes with a handkerchief and nodded repeatedly. Chu Qingyan was about to bid farewell to her father when she saw his expression flickering. She was about to ask when a pair of wings suddenly sprouted from her father's back. "Xiao Hai?" she asked curiously. As soon as he finished speaking, a huge eagle walked out from behind Chu Yunqing's father. Behind it were several eagle guards, as well as 1 big and 3 small snow wolves. What was important was not these, but the small cloth bags that little Hai and the others were carrying. Why did they look so much like cloth bags? Chu Qingyan immediately turned to look at her father. "Father, what's going on? Why are Xiao Hai and the others here?" Mr. Chu scratched his head and said guiltily, "When I came out today, I accidentally mentioned it to them, and then Xiao Hai and its eagle guards puffed out their chests with their heads held high. The big one and the 3 small ones rubbed against her feet and acted cute. Father, don't tell me that they want to go with me?" Chu Qingyan pointed at them in disbelief. Mr. Chu coughed softly. "They're too smart. They're clamoring for food to be prepared for them. Anyway, it's none of my business." As soon as Mr. Chu finished speaking, Xiao Hai and the others shook the cloth bags on their backs, looking very energetic. She had tried her best to prevent them from following her, but she didn't expect that it would still happen. Forget it. They're not ordinary creatures. If they want to follow, let them. Cheng Luo spoke up at the right time. Chu Qingyan's shoulders drooped as she looked helplessly at the bouncing animals. When they saw her looking at them, they immediately sat up straight and looked very obedient. She had no choice but to agree. With Xiao Hai and the others interrupting her, the sadness of parting eased considerably. Su Yi and the others had already brought out their horses. Chu Qingyan flipped onto her horse, and glutinous rice ball jumped onto her back. The others also got on their horses one after another. Only the gerfalcon flew up and circled in the air to prove that it could travel alone. After bidding farewell to her parents, Chu Qingyan raised her hand to get the horse ready. Suddenly, she saw an empty horse beside her. She thought that Su Yi and the others had prepared an extra one, but she didn't expect to see Yen Luo take the bag from the servant and walk towards her. She was shocked again. "Wait, are you telling me that you want to go with me?" Cheng Yen Luo lowered her eyebrows, but quickly raised them again. She smiled and said, "Why not?" "No, I can't let you take the risk." Although Yen Luo knew martial arts, it could only be considered as self-defense. She couldn't agree. "I don't need your protection. If necessary, I can save people. This isn't a losing deal." Cheng Yen Luo crossed her arms and said nonchalantly. Chu Qingyan couldn't accept her words. "Yen Luo, I won't agree. There are military doctors in the army who can save people. Little girl, do you think an ordinary military doctor can be compared to me?" Cheng Yen Luo shook her head with a smile, her face full of confidence. Chu Qingyan was silent for a moment before she slowly said seriously, "Give me a reason why I have to go." When Cheng Yen Luo heard this, the relaxed expression on her face quickly faded. She pursed her lips and looked at the deserted road. She said calmly, "I don't know, but a voice in my heart is telling me that I have to go." Chu Qingyan followed her line of sight. The misty path seemed to hold the answer she was looking for. "Alright, I agree. But you have to guarantee your safety. If the situation doesn't look good, you have to come back." Chu Qingyan could only take a step back. She could see the determination in Yen Luo's eyes. She knew that she couldn't stop her. If she refused, Yen Luo would find a way to follow. In that case, she would be even more insecure. Cheng Yen Luo swept away the dazed look on her face and nimbly mounted the horse. Then, she smiled sweetly at Chu Qingyan. "I knew you wouldn't have the heart to refuse." Then, as if she was afraid that Yen Luo would go back on her words, she immediately whipped her horse and moved forward. Chu Qingyan couldn't do anything about her. She looked at her departing figure, then turned to look at her closest relatives and the crowd standing on the steps. She deeply imprinted their faces in her heart. Then, she waved her hand and rode forward without looking back. She couldn't bear to look back. "Don't lower your head. Tears will fall." Xining, Yang Xiaohuan, and the rest of the Chu family watched her disappear into the fog. Tears streamed down their faces. She didn't know when they would meet again. She put her hands together and prayed that they would be safe and sound. Chapter 874. Chu Qingyan and her party moved forward quickly because Xiao Su and his men had already left the city. Xiao Lai's cavalry were all experts in riding horses. In a short period of time, she could not even see their shadows. Fortunately, she had the map in her hands. Even if she could not find them, following the route, she would be able to find the three armies. At that time, she would be able to find the big ice cube. Wouldn't that be an easy task? Just as she was immersed in her thoughts, Yen Luo suddenly called out to her. She raised her head and looked at her strangely. Yen Luo gave her a meaningful glance, and only then did Chu Qingyan look ahead blankly. Coincidentally, there was a thick fog today, so she dared to follow Big Ice Cube and his men openly. At this moment, there was a tall figure standing in the fog. She tried hard to open her eyes. When she saw the figure in the fog clearly, her pupils shrank. How could it be him? Dongting? Cheng Yen Luo patted her shoulder. We'll give you some time to settle it. We'll go first. I'll catch up with you later. As she spoke, she gradually slowed down. When the people behind her overtook her one by one, she flipped over and dismounted. Holding the reins, she walked to Higashio Motetsu. Before she could speak, the other party had already lazily opened his mouth. You didn't even say a word before leaving. Is it really okay to leave without saying goodbye? To think that I woke up so early in the morning just to see you off. Chu Qingyan heaved a sigh of relief when she heard his slightly reproachful voice. This person didn't blame her. She hugged glutinous rice ball and stood in front of the horse. She looked a little apologetic as she said, "It was a sudden decision. I didn't have time to inform you. You're a magnanimous person, so please don't be calculative with me." Although Higashio Motetsu's expression was languid, his gaze fell on her with an unfathomable light. He snorted lightly. You've always valued your lover over your friends. Don't mention it. Chu Qingyan hurriedly smiled. No way. As the saying goes, a prime minister is magnanimous. Don't be so stingy. At most, I'll apologize to you. Higashio Motetsu raised a finger and wagged it in front of her eyes. First of all, I'm not the prime minister, so I can't do anything. Second of all, if an apology is useful, do we still need the government? Upon hearing this, Chu Qingyan put away the fawning expression on her face. She raised her eyebrows and glanced at him. She sneered, "Don't open a dye house just because I give you some color. You climb up a pole just because I give you some. That's not what friends do." Higashio Motetsu sighed and shook his head. You've given yourself away, haven't you? You just don't take me seriously. I held back the opportunity to play chess with Duke of Zhou and came here to see you off. How could you treat me like this? I'm so sad. I'm so careless in making friends. Chu Qingyan's eyebrows twitched at his words. In the end, she couldn't stand his abandoned look and finally said, all right. I know how good you are. I'm very grateful that you held back the time to spend your sweet dreams in bed and braved the dew to see me. It's good that you know. Higashio Motetsu blinked and returned to his usual mischievous self. Chu Qingyan knew that she had been tricked by him again. She said in a bad mood, all right, I've seen you and seen you off. I should be on my way. Otherwise, I won't be able to leave the city in time. Higashio Motetsu saw her anxious expression and his heart suddenly turned cold. However, he still had a smile on his face. There's no hurry. I'm not just here to see you off. I'm also here to give you a gift. Gift? Are you planning to curry favor with me before I become famous on the battlefield? Aren't you thinking too much? Am I that kind of snobbish person? Chu Qingyan couldn't help but laugh until she bent over. Seeing that she was laughing until tears were about to come out, Higashio Motetsu was speechless. Don't forget that it's your birthday in 4 days. Didn't you ask me for a gift before? Why is it that every time something comes to your mouth, it becomes nothing good? If you say that again, I'll take back what I just said. Chu Qingyan immediately stopped laughing when she heard that. She stretched out her hand in front of him and said shamelessly, it'll be a waste if I don't take it. Quickly take it out and let me see what good things you've prepared for me. Higashio Motetsu wanted to tease her a little more. However, when he saw her clear eyes that were like a stream with tears of laughter, The clear luster flashing and the mist behind her, it was as if there was only this bit of light in the world. It was pure and clean. He couldn't help but shut his mouth. Sometimes, he would wonder why there were such bright eyes in this world. They were more dazzling than the stars in the sky, and they could make the darkness in the depths of people's hearts disappear. He lowered his eyes and smiled lightly. Then, he pretended to be helpless and obedient as he took out a slender box from his sleeve. He then casually stuffed it into her hand. Free. I really can't stand you. The extra weight in her hand made Chu Qingyan hold it tightly in surprise. She looked down and then frowned in confusion. It's a little heavy. What is it? Let me open it and see. Do you think it's appropriate to open a gift in front of me? Higashio Motetsu knocked her head casually, and then smiled as she bared her teeth. I'll open it on your birthday. Didn't you say that there's not enough time? Hurry up and go. After his reminder, Chu Qingyan immediately put the box into the bag on her shoulder. Then, she looked up at him and smiled brightly. Then I'll be going. I won't say any more nonsense. Take care. With that, she leaped onto her horse and grabbed the reins. Just as she was about to start the horse, she turned around and smiled. Dong Ting will meet again someday. After saying that, she whipped her horse and galloped forward. When she turned back, he was still standing in the same place. She patted her forehead and said in annoyance, I forgot to ask him how he knew I was leaving. Forget it, it's more important to hurry up. Dong Ting watched as the crimson figure disappeared into the fog. It was as if a red light had flashed across his life, and then disappeared into a place that didn't belong to him. Little girl, we'll meet again someday. Until then, you have to take care of yourself. Young master, how did you know that Miss Chu would follow the King of England to the battlefield once the imperial edict was issued? A figure appeared in the fog. She has deep feelings for Xiao Su. I don't even need to guess. Higashio Motetsu put his hands behind his back and slowly walked in the opposite direction of Chu Qingyan. Then how did you know that she would choose to secretly follow the King of England? Xuanqi Zimo asked again. His lips curved into a smile. Because I understand her. Then why didn't young master persuade Miss Chu? Going to the front lines is no joke. Xuanqi Zimo asked casually. Higashio Motetsu's footsteps suddenly stopped, but he quickly regained his composure. Even his subordinates didn't notice. Don't you think you're talking too much today? His resplendent voice was filled with an imposing aura. Xuanqi Zimo immediately fell silent. Higashio Motetsu strolled through the fog. His expression was so calm that it made people tremble in fear. It wasn't that he didn't want to persuade her, but he knew the result. He never did anything that was useless. You're tuning in to the Passion Pages YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.